An exciting story of redemption, love, passion, and new beginnings. She ran from the altar with her heart in flames and fell into the arms of a man who could destroy her. But nothing prepared her for the secret he kept, a secret that involved her past. Watch this story until the end, you'll be surprised by it. If you enjoy love stories and romance, subscribe to this channel, leave your comment. We post videos like this every day. Continuing, Isabella Pierce always knew that the life she led wasn't truly hers. She grew up amid formal dinners and heavy silences, educated to become the ideal woman, the perfect wife, the obedient daughter. From an early age, she learned to dress to please others, to smile without showing her teeth, to stay silent when her intuition screamed. At 29, she was about to marry Andrew Davidson, heir to a legal empire, in a wedding carefully orchestrated by her parents to unite fortunes, clean up past scandals, and preserve the prestige of their families. But there was a restlessness inside her that could no longer be silenced. The Pierce mansion in Westchester County was in turmoil that Thursday in July. Florists rushed through hallways carrying arrangements of white roses and lilies, while the event coordinator checked every decoration detail for the third time. The wedding would be on Saturday, and Isabella felt the weight of each preparation like a stone being piled on her chest. Standing before the mirror in her room, she observed the reflection of a woman she didn't fully recognize. Her brown hair had been straightened until it looked like silk, pulled into a low bun that her mother considered elegant and appropriate. The makeup, tested for the third time that week, highlighted her green eyes in a way she found artificial. Everything about her had been calculated, measured, approved by other people. "Isabella, dear, you need to come down for dinner." Victoria Pierce's voice echoed from the hallway, carrying that gentle authority that didn't allow for contestation. "The Davidsons arrived 15 minutes ago." Isabella closed her eyes for a moment, breathing deeply. The French perfume her mother had chosen for her, because Andrew adores bergamot, seemed to suffocate her. She adjusted her navy blue dress, also chosen to please her fiancé, and descended the marble staircase that always echoed like a drum announcing her arrival. The main hall was illuminated by crystal chandeliers that had belonged to the family for 3 generations. Andrew stood near the fireplace, talking to his father about some complex legal case. At 32, he had the appearance of someone born to occupy important spaces. Tall, dark hair always perfectly combed, custom-made suits worth more than a mid-range car. He was handsome, well-educated, successful. In theory, he was perfect. "My love." Andrew approached and kissed her cheek, a chaste kiss that felt more like a social greeting. "You look beautiful." "Thank you." Isabella smiled, that smile she had practiced so many times in the mirror, a smile that never reached her eyes. Dinner proceeded as always. Conversations about business, comments about New York high society, mutual compliments between the two families. Isabella participated when necessary, nodded when expected, laughed when appropriate. It was a performance she had mastered since adolescence, but that night it felt heavier than ever. "We're very excited about the honeymoon in Paris," commented Hannah Davidson, Andrew's mother, as she delicately cut her salmon. "The hotel we chose has a magnificent view of the Eiffel Tower." "It will be unforgettable," replied Victoria, smiling at her daughter. "Isabella has always dreamed of visiting France, hasn't she, dear?" Isabella nodded, although she had never expressed such a dream. In fact, her dreams had always been discouraged as inappropriate fantasies for a young woman of her position. She wanted to travel alone, to discover simple places, to talk with ordinary people. But these desires had been gently suffocated over the years. "And after the wedding," continued Richard Pierce, her father, with the tone of someone closing an important business deal, "we can finally integrate the firms. The Pierce-Davidson merger will be a milestone in American corporate law." It was at this moment that Isabella understood with painful clarity that she wasn't there as a daughter, as a woman, as a bride. She was there as an asset, their valuable piece being moved on the family business chessboard. Dessert, a chocolate souffle she didn't touch, was served accompanied by conversations about the ceremony, how many guests, which orchestra would play, how the press coverage would be discreetly handled. Everything planned to project the image of a perfect union between two of the most traditional New York families. "Well, I believe it's time for us to leave," announced Hannah Davidson at 10 o'clock. "Tomorrow will be a long day of final preparations." While the adults said goodbye in the entrance hall, Andrew pulled Isabella to a more private corner. "I know you're nervous," he said, holding her hands with a familiarity that always bothered her. "It's natural. But I want you to know that I'll take good care of you. We'll be very happy together." Isabella looked him in the eyes. Andrew wasn't a bad man. He didn't mistreat her or openly disrespect her, but he didn't know her either. In 2 years of engagement, he had never asked about her fears, her true dreams, her real opinions on anything important. For him, she was exactly what she should be, beautiful, educated, silent when necessary. "Andrew," she began, feeling a strange courage growing in her chest, "do you really love me?" He seemed genuinely surprised by the question. "Of course I love you. Why do you ask that? But do you love me, or do you love the idea of what I represent?" Andrew laughed, as if she had made a joke. "What a strange question, my love. You're perfect. You're everything a man could want in a wife." The answer confirmed what Isabella already knew. She wasn't a person to him. She was an achieved ideal. After the Davidsons left, Isabella went up to her room and lay down still dressed. The ceiling of her room, which she had known since childhood, seemed strange that night, as if it belonged to another life, to another person. She closed her eyes and tried to imagine herself walking down the aisle on Saturday, saying yes in front of 300 guests, kissing Andrew as his wife. The image made her sit up abruptly in bed, her heart racing. She couldn't do it. She simply couldn't do it. It was almost midnight when she decided to go downstairs for a glass of water. The mansion was immersed in silence, only the tick-tock of the ancestral clock in the hall marking the passage of time. Isabella was walking barefoot down the corridor when she heard muffled voices coming from her father's study. She approached the half-open door and recognized the voices. Richard Pierce and Andrew were still there, talking in low tones. She can't know, at least not now," her father was saying. "If she discovers the truth about Lily, everything could fall apart." Isabella froze. Lily? Who was Lily? But what if he appears? Andrew's voice sounded tense, worried. "What if Damien Carter decides to investigate again? You said he had given up." Damien Carter. The name hit Isabella like lightning. She had never heard it before, but something about it resonated in her chest in an inexplicable way. "Carter hasn't been our problem for years," replied Richard, but there was a hardness in his voice that Isabella rarely heard. "He lost everything that mattered. He won't risk it again. But if he discovers about Isabella, he won't discover. The wedding solves everything. Once she's officially married to you, protected by the Davidson name, any investigation into the past loses strength. Besides," Richard's voice got even lower, "he doesn't know she exists." Isabella felt the world spinning around her. What were they talking about? What past? What truth about this Lily person? And why did they mention her wedding as if it were protection, not a celebration? "I still think we should have told her," murmured Andrew. "If she ever finds out—" "She won't find out because there's nothing to find out. Lily died 29 years ago. End of story. What matters now is that Isabella gets married, is happy, and our family can finally leave the past where it belongs." 29 years, the same age as Isabella. She backed away slowly, her heart beating so loud she feared they might hear it. She climbed the stairs as if in a trance, entered her room, and locked herself in. She sat on the bed, trying to process what she had heard. Lily, Damien Carter, a past that needed to be buried, a wedding that served as protection. And then, as if a dam had opened in her mind, fragments of strange memories began to emerge. Recurring dreams she'd had since childhood, a lit fireplace, a grand piano, a male voice whispering her name, but not Isabella. Another name, which she could never remember upon waking. She got up and went to the dresser, where she kept some old jewelry that had belonged to her grandmother. At the bottom of the drawer she found a small golden key that had always been there, but whose purpose she had never known. That night, for the first time, the key seemed to pulse in her hand. Friday dawned, and the house was more agitated than ever. Florists, event coordinators, seamstresses, hairstylists, dozens of people working to ensure everything would be perfect for the big day. Isabella observed the movement, as if it were a movie, disconnected from reality. "My daughter, you need to eat something," said Victoria, entering the room with a tray. "Tomorrow will be a long day. You need to be strong." Mom, Isabella began, her voice coming out weaker than intended. Who is Lily? Victoria's face transformed instantly. The color disappeared from her cheeks, and the tray trembled in her hands. What did you say? Lily, I dreamed about that name. I thought you might know. Victoria placed the tray on the dresser and sat on the bed, facing her daughter. Her eyes, normally hard and controlled, seemed full of an old pain. Where did you hear that name, Isabella? I didn't hear it. I dreamed it. I've been dreaming about this name since I was little, but yesterday it became clearer. Victoria remained silent for a long moment, as if deciding how much she could reveal. Lily was a distant cousin. She died when you were a baby. There's nothing important about her that you need to know, but the way her mother averted her gaze, the way her hands trembled slightly, told Isabella she was lying. How did she die? It was an accident. Isabella, please, let's not talk about sad things on the eve of your wedding. You should be thinking about your future with Andrew, not about ghosts from the past. Ghosts from the past. Victoria's choice of words wasn't accidental. That afternoon, while the house buzzed with activity, Isabella found a moment of peace in the garden. She sat on the bench under the maple tree, where she used to read as a child, trying to organize her thoughts. The air was cold, typical of July in New York, and the gray sky threatened rain. That's when she saw Andrew approaching, his face more serious than usual. "We need to talk," he said, sitting beside her. "About what?" "About last night. I know you heard us." Isabella felt her blood freeze. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Isabella, please, don't insult me by pretending ignorance. I saw you moving away from the study door." She looked at him directly. "Then explain to me. Who is Lily? Who is Damien Carter? Why is my wedding a protection?" Andrew sighed deeply, running his hands through his hair. "Some things are better left in the past." "But they didn't stay in the past, did they? If they did, why are you still talking about them? Why does my mother turn pale when I mention the name Lily?" "Because Lily was your sister." The words came out of Andrew like a forced confession, and Isabella felt the world stop around her. "What?" "Your half-sister, your father's daughter with another woman. She was born in the same year as you, a few months earlier. Your parents raised both of you, but Lily was always different. Rebellious. She questioned everything, challenged the family rules, and she fell in love with the wrong man. Damien Carter. Yes, a dangerous man, from a family with a history of violence and corruption. When Lily announced she would marry him, your parents intervened." "How?" Andrew hesitated, clearly uncomfortable. "There was an accident. Lily died a few weeks before the wedding." "What kind of accident?" "She crashed her car. She was driving alone at night, lost control in the rain. It was tragic." Isabella absorbed the information slowly. A sister she never knew existed. A dead sister. A sister who had defied the family. "Why did you never tell me?" "Because your parents wanted to protect you. They thought it would be better for you to grow up without knowing about this tragedy. And it worked, didn't it? You grew up happy, safe, loved." "I grew up lying to myself," Isabella corrected, her voice carrying an anger she didn't know she possessed. "I grew up being molded not to commit the same mistakes as Lily." "That's not true, isn't it? Then why do you think my marriage to you is a protection? Protection against what?" Andrew remained silent for a long moment, looking at his own hands. Damien Carter never believed that Lily's death was an accident. He spent years trying to prove there was interference. He investigated, hired detectives, filed lawsuits. He never managed to prove anything, but he also never completely gave up. If he discovered about you, what would happen? He could try to use you to resurrect his conspiracy theories. He could turn you against your own family. He's a bitter man obsessed with revenge. We don't want you to be dragged into that darkness." Isabella rose from the bench, walking a few steps toward the maple tree. The autumn leaves hung from the branches like small ripe memories, ready to be picked or forgotten. "And what if he's right?" she asked, without turning around. "What? What if Lily's death wasn't an accident?" "Isabella, you can't think like that. Your parents love you. They would never harm Lily, despite all the disagreements they had. But they did, didn't they? Even if they didn't cause the accident, they hurt her. They tried to prevent her marriage, controlled her life, forced her to choose between family and love." Andrew approached, trying to touch her arm, but she pulled away. That's different. They were trying to protect her from a dangerous man, or trying to protect their own interests. Andrew, be honest with me. Is our marriage about love or convenience? It can be both, but it's not, is it? You chose me because I'm suitable, because I'm the right daughter, from the right family, with the right education. Because unlike Lily, I never questioned, never rebelled, never loved the wrong person. Isabella. Until now. The words left her mouth before she could contain them, and both were shocked by the involuntary confession. What do you mean by that? Isabella turned to face him, and for the first time in years, she spoke her complete truth. I mean, I don't love you, Andrew. I respect you, I like you, but I don't love you. And you don't love me. We're two people being pushed into a marriage that serves everyone's interests except our own. That's not true. I love you. No, you don't. You love the idea of me. You love what I represent, what I can offer. But you don't really know me. You don't know that I hate bergamot, that I dream of visiting the American Southwest instead of Paris, that I want to work with children instead of organizing charity teas. You don't know that I have recurring nightmares about a life that isn't mine, that sometimes I feel like I'm living in someone else's place. Andrew looked at her as if he was seeing a stranger. Where is all this coming from? You never talked about any of this. Because you never asked. In 2 years of engagement, have you ever asked me about my real dreams, about my fears, about what I really want from life? He didn't answer, because they both knew the answer. Isabella, it's normal to be nervous before the wedding. All brides go through this. Tomorrow, when you're walking down the aisle, all these fears will disappear. And if they don't, they will. But what if they don't? She insisted. What if I can't say yes? You will, because that's what people like us do. We fulfill our obligations, honor our commitments, do what's right for our families. And Lily? She was also like us, but she chose differently. And see what happened to her. The coldness in Andrew's voice made Isabella recoil. For a moment, he seemed like a complete stranger. Are you threatening me? I'm reminding you of reality. The world isn't a fairy tale, Isabella. We can't always have everything we want. Sometimes we have to choose between our desires and our safety. And you think our life together will be safe. I think it will be predictable, and stable, and respectable. That's not a small thing. Isabella looked at the man she was supposed to marry the next day and felt a crystal-clear clarity. He was right, it wasn't a small thing. For many women it would be enough, but not for her. Not anymore. I can't, Andrew. Can't what? I can't marry you. The words came out as a whisper, but they carried the weight of a decision that would change everything. Isabella, you're panicking. It's normal. Let's forget this conversation, and tomorrow. There won't be a tomorrow, not for us. She started walking toward the house, but Andrew grabbed her arm. You can't do this. You can't cancel the wedding on the eve. Think about what this will do to our families, to our reputation. Think about what the wedding will do to me. She pulled away and ran into the house, going straight to her room. She locked the door and threw herself on the bed, her heart beating erratically. Outside she could hear the movement continuing, people preparing a ceremony that wouldn't happen. It was almost night when her mother knocked on the door. Isabella, open up. We need to talk. I don't want to talk. Andrew told me about you two, about your doubts. It's normal, dear. All brides get nervous. It's not nerves, Mom. It's certainty. Open the door, please. Isabella got up and unlocked the door. Victoria entered with a worried face, but trying to maintain her composure. Sit down, she said, indicating the armchair near the window. Let's talk like adults. Fine. Then tell me the truth about Lily. Victoria sighed deeply, as if she knew this moment would eventually come. Lily was your half-sister, your father's daughter with a woman he loved before me. When she died in childbirth, your father brought Lily home. We raised you together as sisters. But you treated her differently. Not intentionally. But Lily was always complicated. She questioned everything, rebelled against any rule, made a point of following the most difficult path. We tried to guide her, but she interpreted any advice as control. And Damien Carter. He was a dangerous man, son of a businessman involved in scandals, corruption investigations. The family had blood on their hands, Isabella, literally. When Lily fell in love with him, we were desperate. You tried to prevent the wedding. We tried to make her see the truth about him. We showed evidence, presented facts, but she was blinded by passion. And then she died. Yes, in a terrible accident. She was returning from a meeting with him, driving in the rain, lost control of the car. Victoria paused, her eyes watery. It was devastating for all of us. Damien believes you killed her. Damien believes in conspiracy theories because he can't accept that he lost the woman he loved through his own irresponsibility. If he hadn't arranged that meeting, if he hadn't insisted she go out on that stormy night, could he be right? Isabella! Victoria stood up, indignant. How can you ask such a thing? We're your family. We loved Lily despite all her difficulties, but not enough to let her be happy. Happiness isn't everything in life. Safety also matters. Stability also matters. Lily chose passion over prudence, and she paid the price. And now you want me to choose differently. We want you to be smart. Andrew is a good man. He'll take care of you, protect you, give you a dignified life. But not a life I chose. Sometimes the best choices are made by people who love us and have more experience. Isabella looked out the window. The garden was sinking into darkness, and the city lights were beginning to twinkle in the distance. Somewhere out there was a different life waiting for her. A life that might include risks, uncertainties, but also possibilities. She would never know if she walked down that aisle the next day. Mom, if you had the chance to live it all over again, would you make the same choices? Victoria hesitated before answering. I would, because they brought me you. But would you be happy? Happiness is a complicated word, Isabella. I am fulfilled. I am respected. I have a family, a social position, security. Isn't that happiness? I don't know, is it? That night, Isabella couldn't sleep. She stayed by the window watching the stars, thinking about Lily, about Damien Carter, about all the choices that had brought her to this moment. At dawn, she made a decision that would change everything. When the first rays of sunlight came through the window, she got up, went to the closet and chose simple clothes. Jeans, a white blouse, sneakers. She packed some essential belongings in a small backpack. Documents, a little money she had saved, the mysterious golden key. She left the engagement ring on the vanity along with a simple note. I can't be the person you want me to be. I need to discover who I really am. Forgive me, Isabella. Then, while the mansion still slept and the final preparations awaited a bride who wouldn't appear, Isabella Pierce left through the back door and walked toward the gate. She didn't look back. At 7 in the morning on a cold July Saturday, she was at the Port Authority bus terminal, buying a ticket for the first bus leaving New York City. The destination didn't matter. What mattered was leaving. The bus took her to downtown Manhattan, and from there she walked aimlessly through streets she had never explored alone. For the first time in her life, she was completely free and completely lost. It was while walking down Park Avenue hours later, hungry, thirsty, and exhausted, that the world began to spin around her. The last thing she saw before fainting was the pavement approaching her face, and the first thing she saw when she woke up was a pair of dark, penetrating eyes observing her with an intensity that made her heart stop. "Are you okay?" asked a deep voice carrying a refined Manhattan accent. Isabella tried to sit up, but dizziness made her waver. She was on a leather sofa, in a room she didn't recognize. A tall man was standing a few feet away, and even without knowing who he was, something about him made every fiber of her body alert. "Who are you?" she managed to ask. "Someone who found you passed out on the street," he replied, but there was something in his eyes that suggested he knew exactly who she was. "Where am I?" "Safe." And then, as if fate were orchestrating every movement, he introduced himself. "My name is Damien Carter." The name echoed in Isabella's chest like distant thunder. Damien Carter. The man she had heard whispered about on the eve of her wedding. The ghost that haunted the corridors of the Pierce fortune was there, real and tangible, observing her with those eyes that seemed to know her for much longer than the few minutes since she had awakened. "Damien Carter," she repeated, her voice coming out weaker than intended. "You know who I am." It wasn't a question. The way he looked at her, with a mixture of fascination and painful recognition, made it clear that her identity was no secret to him. "I do," he answered simply, walking to a bookshelf loaded with old books. He poured himself a glass of whiskey and offered her a glass of water. Isabella Pierce. The daughter who was supposed to get married today. "How do you know that?" Damien sat in the armchair across from the sofa, maintaining a respectful distance, but his eyes never left hers for a second. New York may be a huge city, but high society circles are small, very small. And when someone from the Pierce family runs away from her own wedding, news travels fast. So you recognize me on the street? I did. He paused, taking a sip of whiskey. But not just by your name. There was something in the way he said this that made Isabella's stomach contract. A strange intimacy, as if they were sharing a secret she herself didn't know. I don't understand. Of course you don't. Nobody bothered to tell you the truth. The bitterness in his voice was palpable. The Pierces have always been specialists in rewriting history when it doesn't favor them. Isabella sat up straighter on the sofa, ignoring the dizziness that still affected her. She was in unknown territory, talking to a man her family considered dangerous, but something about him awakened a curiosity she had never felt before. Then tell me the truth. Damien studied her for a long moment, as if assessing how much she could handle. The truth is long and painful, and you just went through a trauma. Maybe it's better to rest first, eat something. No. The firmness in her own voice surprised her. I've spent 29 years hearing half-truths and well-intentioned lies. If you know the real story, I want to hear it. Now. He stood up and walked to the window that overlooked an internal garden. The house was impressive, not just large, but laden with a somber elegance that contrasted completely with the pompous decoration of the Pierce mansion. Here, each object seemed to have a history. Each piece of furniture carried emotional weight. 29 years ago, Damien began, still with his back to her, I was a young man of 25, freshly graduated in architecture, just inheriting the family business after my father's death. I was arrogant, ambitious, and thought I could conquer the world. He turned to face her. That's when I met Lily. The name made something move in Isabella's chest, a strange sensation of recognition mixed with loss. She was different from all the women I knew, intelligent, challenging, impossible to dominate or impress. She came from a traditional family but had her own ideas about everything, politics, art, life. We would argue for hours about anything. She made me think, made me question, made me want to be a better man. You fell in love. We fell in love. Damien returned to the armchair, but this time he leaned forward, hands intertwined. It was overwhelming. The kind of love that consumes, that transforms, that makes you believe it's worth taking any risk. But there were risks. Many. My family did, in fact, have a complicated history. My father was involved in questionable business, and I was trying to clean up the Carter name when I met her. To the Pierces, I represented everything they despised: new money, questionable wealth, lack of tradition, and they tried to separate you. They tried in every possible way, first with kindness, then with threats, finally with blackmail. Damien's fists closed involuntarily. They told Lily that if she married me, she would be disinherited, expelled from the family, that she would never be able to see you again. Me? Isabella felt her heart accelerate. But I was just a baby. You were. But Lily loved you deeply. You two were born in the same year, were raised as sisters, and she felt responsible for protecting you. The Pierces knew this, and they used that love against her. The revelation hit Isabella like a punch to the stomach. Her family had used her love for her as a weapon to control Lily. So she chose the family. At first, yes. She cancelled the wedding, said she had made a mistake, that she needed to be more responsible. Damien stood up again, pacing the room like a caged animal. But 3 weeks later she changed her mind. She appeared at my door in the middle of the night crying, saying she couldn't live without me, that she would find a way to make it work. What happened then? We arranged to meet the next day. She would come here, we would talk, make plans. Maybe we'd flee New York, start a new life somewhere else where our family names wouldn't matter. Damien stopped pacing and looked directly at Isabella. She never arrived here. The accident. The supposed accident. The correction was made with a hardness that made Isabella shiver. Lily had been driving since she was 16. She knew the streets of New York like few did. She was careful, responsible, and that night she supposedly lost control of the car on a curve she drove every day. You don't believe it was an accident. I believe it was murder. The word hung in the air between them like an accusation. Isabella felt her mouth go dry. Do you have proof? I had. I hired investigators, analyzed the expert reports, interrogated witnesses. There were inconsistencies in the accident scene, problems with the car's technical report, witnesses who changed their versions. But every time I got close to something concrete, the evidence would disappear, people would move away or change their stories. My family has influence. Your family has a lot of power and a lot to hide. Damien returned to the armchair, but remained tense. I spent 15 years trying to prove that Lily was murdered, 15 years knocking on closed doors, facing defamation lawsuits, watching my own reputation be systematically destroyed. And then you gave up? I didn't give up. I was forced to stop. He took another sip of whiskey, the amber liquid reflecting the afternoon light. I received a very clear visit from very powerful people. I was explained that if I continued with my conspiracy fantasies, I could suffer the same fate as Lily. Isabella felt a chill run down her spine. The idea that her own family could be involved in something so horrible was almost unbearable. But you still believe they killed her? I know they did. I can't prove it, but I know. Then why did you bring me to your house? If you believe my family is capable of murder, why risk helping me? Damien looked at her with an intensity that made her heart race. Because when I saw you passed out on that sidewalk, for a moment I thought it was her. I thought Lily had come back to me. The air in the room seemed to get denser. Isabella felt as if she were drowning in emotions she didn't fully understand. Do we look alike? Extraordinarily alike. Not just physically, although that alone is impressive, but in the way you move, how you furrow your brow when you're concentrating, how you bite your lower lip when you're nervous. Isabella involuntarily touched her lower lip, confirming the gesture she didn't know she made. That's impossible. We're just half-sisters. Lily used to say that you were more than sisters. She said it was as if you shared a soul. Are you trying to manipulate me? The question came out more aggressive than she intended, but Damien didn't seem offended. I'm trying to be honest with you. Something your family never was. My family may have its flaws, but they love me. They love the version of you they created, the obedient daughter, the perfect bride. But what if you don't want to be that person? What if you want to make your own choices, like Lily wanted? I'm not Lily. No, you're not. But you carry something of her. Since you arrived here, it's as if her presence had returned to fill these empty spaces. Isabella stood up abruptly, her head spinning with the sudden change in position. This is crazy. You're projecting your feelings for a dead woman onto me. This isn't healthy for either of us. You're right, Damien agreed, surprising her. It's crazy. But sometimes madness is the only answer to an impossible situation. She walked to the window, observing the internal garden. It was meticulously maintained, but there was something melancholic about it, as if it were a living memorial. Did Lily like gardens? She loved them. She said plants were honest. They grew, flowered, died without pretending to be something else. And you maintain this garden in her memory. I maintain this entire house in her memory. Every room, every piece of furniture, every book remains exactly as it was on the day she should have arrived here for the last time. Isabella turned to face him, and for the first time she saw the depth of his pain. It wasn't just longing, it was a wound that had never healed. Damien, this isn't life, this is a mausoleum. It's my life. And it worked perfectly until you appeared. Then maybe it's time to let me go. Where to? The question was asked with a simplicity that disarmed her. Your family is certainly already looking for you. Andrew must be mobilizing all available resources. Do you think you can simply disappear? I can try. With what money, with what documents, with what plans? Damien got up and walked to her. Isabella, you were raised to be protected, cared for, maintained. You don't have the necessary skills to survive alone in the real world. The observation hurt because it was true. So, what do you suggest? That you stay here, for now, until we figure out what you really want to do. And in return? In return for nothing. Just let me get to know you. Let me understand who you really are, beyond the person they made you believe you should be. There was something in the way he said this that made Isabella's heart race. It wasn't just curiosity, it was something deeper, more dangerous. That's not a good idea. Probably not. You're still in love with a dead woman. Yes. And I just ran away from my own wedding. Yes. So why does it seem like we can't stop looking at each other? The question left her mouth before she could prevent it, raw and honest. Damien took a step closer, and she could feel the heat emanating from his body. Because there's something between us that I can't explain, and you feel it too. She wanted to deny it, but couldn't. From the moment she had awakened and seen his eyes, something in her chest had ignited. It wasn't just physical attraction, it was recognition, as if part of her already knew this man. This is impossible. Many impossible things have happened in the last 24 hours. Damien, she began, but was interrupted by the sound of her own stomach audibly growling. He smiled for the first time since she had awakened, and the smile completely transformed his face. For a moment she could see the 25-year-old young man who had fallen in love with Lily. When was the last time you ate? Dinner yesterday, I think. Then let's solve that first, we can figure out the rest later. Damien's kitchen was surprisingly cozy for such an imposing mansion. It was spacious but functional, with dark marble countertops and modern appliances that harmoniously contrasted with the antique wooden cabinets. You cook? Asked Isabella, sitting on a high stool at the central island. I learned out of necessity. After I dismissed most of the staff, I had to adapt. Why did you dismiss the staff? I didn't like being observed, and I couldn't bear the pity in their eyes. Damien opened the refrigerator and began removing ingredients: eggs, cheese, ham, tomatoes. Will an omelette do? Perfectly. She watched him cook, noting the economy of movements, the silent concentration. There was something hypnotic about the way he cracked the eggs, how he beat the mixture, how he heated the pan. Can I ask you something? She said, breaking the silence. You may. How did you know I had run away from the wedding? Even if news travels fast, it hasn't been 12 hours since I left home. Damien paused in preparing the omelette. I have contacts, people who keep me informed about the Pierce family. You spy on me? Not you specifically, but I've been monitoring your family's activities for years. I'm still looking for evidence about Lily's death. And have you found anything? Fragments, clues. Nothing conclusive. He poured the egg mixture into the hot pan. But in recent weeks there's been strange movement. Unusual meetings, cryptic conversations, reinforced security measures. Related to my wedding? Related to what your wedding represented? The definitive union between the Pierce and Davidson families wasn't just social, it was strategic. A protective move against something. Against what? Or against whom? Damien flipped the omelette with a skillful movement. Against me. Isabella felt a chill in her stomach that had nothing to do with hunger. What do you mean? In recent months, I've made contact with some people willing to talk about what really happened that night. A nurse who worked at the hospital where Lily was taken, a mechanic who examined the car wreckage before they mysteriously disappeared. Small things, but enough to scare someone. And you think they found out you were investigating again? I'm certain they found out, and your wedding was the way to create a definitive legal barrier. Once you were officially a Davidson, anything I discovered about the Pierces could be contested as family persecution. Damien placed the omelette on a plate and served it to her, along with toast he had made while they were talking. Thank you, she said, but had lost part of her appetite. So my escape disrupted their plans. Completely. And now they'll be desperate. Desperate how? I don't know, but desperate men do unpredictable things. Isabella ate in silence for a few minutes, processing everything she had heard. The food was delicious, but each forkful seemed heavy with the weight of the revelations. Damien, she said finally, what if you're wrong? What if Lily really died in an accident, and you've spent all these years chasing ghosts? Then I wasted 29 years of my life. Doesn't that scare you? Not as much as the possibility of being right. After dinner, Damien showed her the rest of the house. It was impressive. 3 floors of classical architecture mixed with modern touches, libraries loaded with books in various languages, living rooms that looked like film sets, spacious bedrooms with views of internal gardens. You live here alone? She asked as they climbed to the 2nd floor. For almost 3 decades. Doesn't it get lonely? Loneliness is different from being alone. I've gotten used to the silence, but it's not life, is it? Damien stopped at the top of the stairs and looked at her. It wasn't. Until today. The intensity in his eyes made something move in her chest, something she couldn't name. It was attraction, yes, but also something deeper, as if part of her already knew that place, that man, that sensation of being home. This will be your room, he said, opening the door to a spacious and airy room. It has a private bathroom, closet, view of the garden. If you need anything during the night, My room is at the end of the hallway. The room was beautiful, antique but well-preserved furniture, a large bed with impeccable white sheets, a reading armchair near the window. But what caught her attention was a photograph on the bedside table. "Who is this?" she asked, although she already knew the answer. "Lily." Isabella picked up the photograph with trembling hands. The resemblance was truly impressive, not just in facial features, but in expression, in the way the eyes shined, even in the almost imperceptible scar on the left eyebrow. "We have the same scar," she murmured. "Yes, I noticed that when you were still unconscious. How did she get hers? She fell off her bicycle when she was 7. And you?" "I fell off my bicycle when I was 7. They looked at each other in silence, both processing the strange coincidence. "This is—" Isabella began. "Impossible," Damien completed. "I know." She put the photograph back in its place, her hands still trembling slightly. "I need to take a shower and think about all this. Of course, I left clean clothes in the closet. They should fit you. Thank you. For everything. You don't need to thank me." Damien was almost out of the room when she called him. "Damien?" "Yes? Why did you really bring me here? And don't tell me it was just because you confused me with her. There's something else, isn't there?" He turned completely to face her, and for the first time since they met, she saw real vulnerability in his eyes. "Because when I saw you today, for the first time in 29 years, I felt that maybe there was a reason to keep living." The words hung in the air between them, charged with an intimacy that made Isabella's heart race. Before she could respond, he had left, gently closing the door behind him. Isabella stood in the middle of the room for a long moment, trying to process everything that had happened that day. In the morning, she was a reluctant bride about to marry a man she didn't love. Now she was in the house of her family's supposed enemy, feeling an inexplicable attraction to a man who had loved her dead sister. The shower was hot and relaxing, and the clothes Damien had left, a light blue silk nightgown and a robe, were the perfect size. Suspiciously perfect. When she looked at herself in the bathroom mirror, she had a shock. With her hair loose and without makeup, the resemblance to Lily in the photograph was even more striking. It was like looking at a ghost. She couldn't sleep. She sat in the armchair near the window, observing the garden illuminated by the full moon. There was something about that place that both calmed and unsettled her, as if it were familiar, as if she had been there before. That's when she decided to explore. She left the room silently and walked through the corridors of the house. On the first floor, she rediscovered the library, the formal dining room, the study full of papers and documents. On the second floor, she found other rooms, all impeccably organized but empty of life. And then she discovered the stairs to the third floor. The attic was different from the rest of the house, less organized, more personal. There were stacked boxes, furniture covered with sheets, paintings leaning against the walls. It was as if it were a memory repository. Isabella walked among the objects, feeling as if she were violating something sacred. And that's when she saw it. In the farthest corner of the attic, under a white sheet, there was an easel with a canvas. She pulled the sheet carefully and almost screamed. It was a portrait of her, or of Lily. It was impossible to tell which of the two was represented in the painting, so perfect was the resemblance. But what shocked her most was the expression on the painted face. It was of someone deeply in love. "You shouldn't be here." Damien's voice behind her made her turn quickly. He was standing at the entrance to the attic, wearing only pajama pants, his chest bare and his hair disheveled. "I'm sorry. I couldn't sleep and decided to snoop around. It wasn't my intention. I was just exploring and—" She gestured toward the painting. "Damien, when was this painted?" 29 years ago, a few weeks before Lily died. But it looks like you." "I know." He approached slowly, as if he too was seeing the painting for the first time in years. "I painted it myself. It was a wedding gift for her." "You're an artist?" "I was. I haven't painted since she died." "Yes." Isabella studied the painting more closely. The technique was impressive, the realism almost photographic. But it was the emotion captured on the canvas that left her breathless. "She really loved you," she said softly. "And I her." "Damien, can I ask you a very personal question?" "You may. When you look at me, do you see her, or do you see me?" He remained silent for a long moment, his eyes fixed on the painting. At first I saw only her, but now, he turned to face her. Now I see you. And that scares me even more. Why? Because it means I may be betraying her memory, and because it means I may be falling in love again. The confession hung between them like a fragile bridge over an abyss. Isabella felt her heart beating so loud she was sure he could hear it. Damien, I know it's crazy, it's wrong, it's impossible. He took a step toward her. But I can't help it. Neither can I, she admitted, her voice coming out as a whisper. Isabella, don't say anything, not now. It's too early, too complicated, too real? She looked him in the eyes and saw her own desire reflected there. It was dangerous, reckless, completely insane, but it was also the most real thing she had felt in her life. Too real, she agreed. Damien approached until he was just inches from her. Isabella could feel the heat of his body, the smell of his skin, the intensity of his gaze. May I touch you? The question was asked with a gentleness that contrasted with the obvious passion in his eyes. Isabella nodded, unable to form words. He slowly raised his hand and touched her face, his fingers tracing the line of her jaw with a reverence that made her legs tremble. You're real, he murmured, as if convincing himself. I'm real. And then, as if it were the most natural thing in the world, he leaned in and kissed her. It was a gentle kiss at first, almost hesitant. But when Isabella responded, deepening the contact, something broke between them. He pulled her closer, his hands entangling in her hair, and she allowed herself to get lost in the sensation. When they finally separated, both were breathless. That was a mistake, she completed, but couldn't move away. Probably? Definitely. Then why doesn't it feel wrong? I don't know. They remained embraced for a few more minutes in silence, processing what had happened. Finally, Damien moved away. You should sleep. Tomorrow will be a difficult day. Why? Because your family will come looking for you. And when they discover you're here, what will happen? I don't know. But whatever it is, we'll face it together. The promise was made with a conviction that warmed Isabella's heart. For the first time in her life, someone was offering to face difficulties beside her, instead of trying to protect her from them. Thank you, she said simply. For what? For letting me be myself. Even without knowing yet who that person really is. We'll discover together. Isabella nodded and began walking toward the stairs, but stopped when she reached the door. Damien? Yes? Tomorrow, I want you to tell me everything. Everything you discovered about Lily's death, everything you suspect about my family, everything you think I need to know. Are you sure? Some truths are hard to hear. I'm sure I've spent my entire life hearing half-truths. Now I want the complete truth, even if it hurts. Then you shall have it. Isabella went down the stairs and returned to her room, but not before looking one last time at the attic. Up there, among covered furniture and stored memories, there was a painting of a dead woman who looked exactly like her. And there was a man who, for 29 years, had lived as if he too were dead. But that night, for the first time since Lily had departed, both felt alive. As she lay in the bed that had belonged to another future, to another love, to another life, Isabella wondered if fate was giving her a second chance to live the life that Lily never could, or if she was walking straight toward the same tragic end. Outside, the full moon illuminated the garden, where flowers planted in memory of a dead woman were beginning, finally, to bloom for a living woman. Isabella woke to the sound of rain beating on the windows, and a strange sensation that she had dreamed of music. A piano playing a melancholic melody that seemed familiar, but that she couldn't identify. She sat up in bed, disoriented for a few seconds, until the memories of the previous day returned like an avalanche. The escape, Damien, the kiss in the attic. She brought her hands to her face, trying to organize her thoughts. In less than 48 hours, her life had completely transformed. From obedient bride to fugitive, from protected daughter to woman discovering dark secrets about her own family. The clock on the bedside table marked 7:15 in the morning. Sunday. Sunday when she should have been waking up as Mrs. Davidson, starting her honeymoon in Paris. Instead, she was in the house of the man her family considered an enemy, feeling an attraction that defied all logic. She got up and walked to the window. The garden was soaked from the night rain, but there was something different in the landscape. Flowers that yesterday seemed closed were now blooming despite the grey weather, as if her presence in the house had awakened something that had been sleeping for a long time. Imagination, she murmured to herself, but couldn't completely dismiss the sensation that this place responded to her presence in an inexplicable way. She took a quick shower and dressed in casual clothes she found in the closet, jeans that fit her body perfectly, and a light blue cotton blouse that highlighted her eyes. Another impossible coincidence, the fact that the clothes fit so well. When she went down to the first floor, she was guided by the aroma of fresh coffee. She found Damien in the kitchen, already dressed and apparently awake for hours. He wore a white shirt with rolled-up sleeves and dark pants, and there was something in the casual way he moved that reminded her of the young architect who had fallen in love with Lily. "Good morning," he said without looking directly at her. "Coffee? Please." There was a tension in the air, an awkwardness that didn't exist the night before. The kiss had changed something between them, created an intimacy that neither knew how to handle in the daylight. "Did you sleep well?" asked Damien, serving coffee in a white porcelain cup. "I dreamed of music." "A piano." He stopped what he was doing, the coffee pot suspended in the air. "What kind of music?" "Melancholic, sad, but beautiful, as if it were a farewell song." Damien put the coffee pot back in its place and finally looked her in the eyes. Lily played the piano. Every night before sleeping, she played a song she had composed. She said it was our song. "Where is the piano?" "In the music room. I haven't opened it since she died." "Yes." Isabella took a sip of coffee, feeling the hot liquid go down her throat. There were so many questions she wanted to ask, so many things she needed to know. "Yesterday you promised to tell me everything. About Lily, about your suspicions, about what really happened. I promised, and I'll keep my word." Damien leaned on the kitchen counter, arms crossed. "But you need to be prepared. This is information that will forever change the way you see your family. It already has changed. The moment I discovered I had a sister no one ever told me about, everything changed. All right. But not here. There's a more appropriate place for this conversation." They finished their coffee in silence, both lost in thought. Then Damien led her to the study, a serious environment with shelves full of law books, an imposing dark wood desk, and on the walls, paintings that seemed to depict the history of the Carter family through generations. "Sit down," he said, indicating a leather armchair near the fireplace. "What I'm going to show you took years to gather." Damien opened a safe hidden behind one of the paintings and removed several folders organized with labels. He placed everything on the desk and sat in the chair across from her. "Let's start at the beginning. Lily's death was officially classified as an automobile accident. According to the police report, she lost control of the vehicle on a wet curve on the Hudson Parkway at 2:35 in the morning of July 15, 1994. He opened the first folder, revealing photographs of the accident scene. Isabella felt her stomach contract at seeing the car wreckage. Her car? A BMW convertible she had received from her parents on her 21st birthday. She had been driving that car for 8 years, knew every peculiarity, every reaction. She was an excellent driver. But accidents can happen to anyone. They can. But there are details that never made sense. Damien pointed to one of the photographs. "See the position of the car. It rolled over multiple times, but ended up almost neatly far from the lane. And observe the braking marks." Isabella studied the image, although she wasn't an expert in traffic accidents. "What's strange about them? They're very short, almost non-existent, as if she hadn't tried to brake or as if the brakes hadn't worked. The brakes failed? Officially, no. The expert report said they were working perfectly." Damien opened another folder. "But this is the original report from the mechanic who first examined the car, the same mechanic who, 3 days later, completely changed his version." Isabella read the document, feeling a growing chill in her stomach. The initial report mentioned irregularities in the braking system, possible sabotage, need for further investigation. And the final report says it was an initial assessment error, that the brakes were perfect, that it was just a tragic accident. What happened to the mechanic? Sebastian Moore, 42 years old, married, 2 children. Had worked in the garage for 15 years, had an impeccable reputation. Damien paused. A week after changing the report, he received a promotion to manager of a garage in Denver. He moved with his family and never spoke about the case again. "You tried to talk to him?" "I tried, multiple times. He always said he couldn't remember details, that it had been a long time ago, that he could have been mistaken in the first report. Isabella leafed through the documents, seeing photographs, reports, testimonies. It was an obsessive, meticulous investigation. How long did you dedicate to this? 15 years of my life, maybe more. Damien. She closed the folder and looked at him directly. What if you're wrong? What if it really was an accident and you've built a conspiracy theory because you can't accept that she's gone? I've thought about that thousands of times. I've repeatedly questioned my own sanity. He stood up and walked to the window. But there are things I can't ignore. Like what? Like the fact that on the night she died, Lily called me at 10 o'clock saying she had discovered something important about your family. Something that would change everything. Isabella felt her heart accelerate. What kind of discovery? I don't know. She said she couldn't talk over the phone, that she would come here to tell me in person. It was the last conversation we had. And you have no idea what she might have discovered. I have theories, but nothing concrete. Damien returned to the chair. In the weeks before her death, she was investigating her own family. She said she had found strange documents in her father's study, conversations that didn't make sense, secret meetings. What kind of document? She didn't get to tell me, but she was worried. She said she was starting to question everything she believed about the Pierces. Isabella slowly absorbed the information. The idea that Lily had discovered something compromising about the family and that this might have cost her life was terrifying. Do you think she discovered something about illegal activities? It's possible. Or about you? About me? Damien hesitated, as if he were treading on delicate ground. Isabella, do you know the circumstances of your birth? I know I was born at Mount Sinai Hospital, that it was a difficult delivery, that my mother was very debilitated afterward. Your biological mother. The words hit Isabella like lightning. What do you mean? Sit down. I am sitting. Then brace yourself, because this is going to be hard to hear. Damien opened another folder, this one full of certificates, medical documents, old photographs. 2 years ago, I gained access to the medical records of the hospital where you were born. It took a lot of money and some questionable contacts, but I managed. He placed a birth certificate on the desk. This is your official certificate, and this, he said, placing another document beside it, is the original hospital record. Isabella looked at the two documents, trying to understand the differences. I don't understand. On the official certificate, Victoria Pierce is listed as your mother. On the original hospital record, the mother's name was left blank, and there's a side note that says, baby for private adoption. The world seemed to stop around Isabella. She reread the document several times, as if the words might change. This doesn't make sense. Victoria is my mother. Victoria raised you as her daughter, but she's not your biological mother. Then who is? I couldn't discover. The records were carefully erased, but there's more. Damien showed a black and white photograph of 2 women in the hospital. This photo was taken on the day of your birth. Do you recognize anyone? Isabella studied the image. One of the women was clearly Victoria, younger but unmistakable. The other, she looks like me. Very much so. And she looks like Lily too. You think she's my biological mother? I think she's your and Lily's biological mother. I think you weren't half-sisters, you were identical twins. The revelation was like being hit by a truck. Isabella stood up abruptly, her head spinning. That's impossible. It's the only explanation that makes sense. The physical resemblance, the identical scar, the fact that you were born in the same year, a few months apart. Twins aren't born months apart, Damien. They are if one of the birth certificates is falsified. Isabella walked around the room, trying to process the information. If it were true, it meant her entire life had been an even bigger lie than she imagined. Why would they separate twins? Why raise one and give the other for adoption? Because the woman who bore them was inconvenient. And because raising 2 illegitimate daughters would be too scandalous, even for the Pierces. But Lily was also raised by the family. Lily was raised, but always as the illegitimate daughter. You were raised as the legitimate heir. Think about it, Isabella. You were always treated differently from her, weren't you? More protected, more controlled, more valuable. The words found an echo in her memories. The stories she heard about Lily always portrayed her as rebellious, problematic, while she was molded to be perfect. If this is true, why did Lily discover it and I didn't? Because Lily questioned everything, and because she had access to places in the house that you never had. What places? Your father's study, the mansion's attic, the family archives. Isabella stopped walking and looked at him. How do you know so much about my family's house? Because I spent years studying every detail of the Pierces' life, and because... He hesitated. Because what? Because Lily told me. She had made a map of the house, knew where everything was hidden. Hidden where? In the mansion's attic. There's a secret archive. Lily had discovered it a few weeks before she died. That's where your father kept the most compromising documents. What kind of documents? Altered birth records, falsified certificates, private adoption contracts, and... Damien made a dramatic pause. Photographs of the woman who really gave birth to both of you. Isabella felt her legs weaken and sat heavily in the armchair. Have you seen these photographs? I saw one of them. Lily managed to take a photo before being discovered. Discovered by whom? By your father. On the night she died. The silence that followed was deafening. Isabella could hear her own heart beating, the sound of rain on the windows, the tick-tock of the old clock on the wall. You're saying that my father discovered that Lily knew the truth, and because of that, I'm saying your sister died because she discovered secrets that could destroy the Pierce family, and I'm saying you're at the same risk. But I don't know anything. Until yesterday, I didn't even know Lily existed. But now you do, and you're here with me. And they must be desperately trying to find you. As if summoned by Damien's words, the sound of the doorbell echoed through the house, a long, insistent, imperious sound. They looked at each other, both instinctively knowing that the moment they feared had arrived. Let's hope it's just the mailman, murmured Isabella, but her voice carried no conviction. Damien stood up and walked to the window that overlooked the main entrance. His face hardened when he saw who was outside. Richard Pierce, and two men I don't recognize. My father is here? Isabella stood up, panic taking over. With security, it seems. The doorbell rang again, longer and more insistent. What do we do? You stay here. I'll answer. No. Isabella held his arm. I won't hide like a child. If he wants to talk to me, let him talk. Isabella, we don't know what kind of man your father really is. If he's capable of... Of what? Of killing me like he killed Lily? The question came out stronger than she intended. Damien, he's my father. He may have his flaws, but he won't hurt me. He may not hurt you, but he may hurt me. The doorbell rang for the third time, now accompanied by strong knocks on the door. Carter, Richard Pierce's voice came through the wood. I know you're in there, and I know my daughter is too. Damien and Isabella looked at each other. There was no more delaying the confrontation. All right, said Damien, but we'll do this on our terms. They walked together to the main door. Damien opened it slowly, revealing Richard Pierce flanked by two large, well-dressed men who were clearly not just drivers. Mr. Pierce, said Damien with icy courtesy, what a surprise. I dispensed with formalities, Carter. I came to get my daughter. Your daughter is fine. And she's here of her own free will. I very much doubt that. Richard looked over Damien's shoulder. Isabella, come out of there immediately. Isabella took a step forward, placing herself beside Damien. Dad, I'm not going anywhere. Richard's face transformed when he saw his daughter. There was relief there, but also anger and something she had never seen before. Fear. Isabella, you have no idea of the danger you're in. This man is... He's the man who told me the truth, she interrupted him. The truth that you hid from me my entire life. What truth? What fantasies has he put in your head? The truth about Lily, about how she died, about who I really am. The silence that followed was charged with tension. The two men behind Richard moved slightly as if preparing to act. Isabella, said Richard with a softer voice, this man is manipulating you. He's poisoning you against your own family with conspiracy theories and lies. Then prove their lies. Tell me who my biological mother is. Explain to me why I have different birth certificates. Tell me why Lily died on the same night she discovered secrets about our family. Richard looked at Damien with a hatred that made Isabella involuntarily step back. You showed her the documents. I showed her the truth. You showed falsified documents, forged records, planted evidence. Then sue me for defamation, like you did all the other times. This time I won't need to sue. There was a clear threat in Richard's voice that made Damien tense. Dad, said Isabella, trying to mediate the situation. "Please, just tell me the truth. If Damien is lying, it will be easy to prove. If he's telling the truth, I deserve to know." Richard looked at her for a long moment, and Isabella saw an internal struggle happening in his eyes. "The truth is complicated, my daughter, and sometimes it's better to leave the past where it belongs." "Not for me, not anymore." "Very well." Richard breathed deeply. "You want the truth?" "The truth is that Lily was an unstable young woman, obsessed with conspiracy theories, who fell in love with a dangerous man and paid the price for her reckless choices. And me. You are my daughter, Victoria's daughter. There's no mystery, no conspiracy. There's just a disturbed man trying to use you to take revenge on a family he blames for his own failures." Isabella looked at Damien, then at her father. Two men who claimed to be telling the truth, two completely different versions of reality. "Prove it," she said finally. "What?" asked Richard. "Prove that I'm Victoria's biological daughter. Prove that Lily died in an accident. Prove that Damien is lying. I don't need to prove anything to you. I'm your father." "No." The word came out with a force that surprised everyone. "You're the man who raised me. That doesn't give you the right to control my life or hide the truth from me." "Isabella, no. I'm tired of being protected, tired of being manipulated, tired of being treated like a doll that needs to be kept away from reality. I'm an adult woman, and I have the right to know my own history." Richard looked at the men behind him, a look that Damien immediately recognized as dangerous. "Mr. Pierce," said Damien calmly, "I suggest you leave. Now, I'm not going anywhere without my daughter. Your daughter already said she's not going with you. She doesn't know what she's saying. She's confused, manipulated. She's thinking for herself for the first time in her life." The tension in the air was palpable. Isabella could feel that something terrible was about to happen. "Dad, please go away. When I'm ready to talk, I'll contact you." "I can't do that, Isabella. I can't leave you in this man's hands." "Then I'll call the police," said Damien. "Trespassing on private property is a crime." Richard laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. "Police? Do you really think the police will choose the side of a criminal's son against a respectable family like the Pierces?" "Let's find out." Damien took a step back, clearly going to get the phone, but one of Richard's men was faster. In a fluid movement, he crossed the door and grabbed Damien's arm. "Hey!" shouted Isabella. "Let him go!" "Isabella, get in the car. Now!" ordered Richard. "I won't." The second man moved toward her, but Damien freed himself from the first and placed himself between them. "Keep your hands off her." "Damien, no," whispered Isabella, realizing the situation was getting out of control. "Get out of my property now." "Not without her," said Richard, inflexible. It was then that Isabella made a decision that would change everything. "All right," she said, surprising everyone. "I'll go with you, Dad." "Isabella, no." Damien turned to her. "You can't." "I can and I will." She looked him in the eyes, trying to convey a silent message. "But I want one thing in return." "What?" asked Richard, suspicious. "I want to see the documents." "I want to go to the mansion's attic and see the secret archives that Lily found." "There are no secret archives." "Then there won't be a problem showing me, will there? If Damien is lying, it will be easy to prove. If he's telling the truth—" She paused. "Well, then we'll have a very different conversation." Richard looked at her for a long moment, clearly torn between the desire to protect her and the fear of what she might discover. "Very well," he said finally. "You'll see there's nothing to see. And then you'll return home and marry Andrew as you should have done yesterday. If there's nothing to see, I'll consider it." Isabella turned to Damien, who was looking at her as if she had lost her mind. "Trust me," she whispered. "Isabella, trust me." She leaned in and kissed him quickly, ignoring the sound of anger that escaped from her father. "I'll come back," she promised against his lips. "You won't come back if they discover what you know. Then you'll have to make sure that doesn't happen." Before Damien could protest again, Isabella walked toward her father's car. The two men positioned themselves beside her, not exactly escorting her, but making it clear there was no option to change her mind. "Isabella!" Damien shouted behind her. She turned one last time. "Watch me," she said, loud enough for her father to hear. "If anything happens to me, you'll know what to do." The implicit threat didn't go unnoticed by Richard, who looked at Damien with renewed hatred. "If you try anything—" "I won't try anything," Damien replied calmly. But if anything happens to her, everyone will know the truth about you, and this time not even all the power of the Pierces will be able to cover it up. Isabella got into the car, her heart beating erratically. Through the window, she saw Damien standing at the door of his house, a solitary figure cut against the grey sky. As the car drove away, she wondered if she had made the bravest or the most stupid decision of her life. Perhaps both. What she couldn't imagine was that, at that exact moment, events were being set in motion that would make it impossible to turn back, and that the truth she was about to discover would be much more terrible than anything she could have imagined. In the Pierce mansion, in the silent attic where secrets had waited for decades to be discovered, the past was about to meet the present in a way that would change everything forever. The journey to the Pierce mansion proceeded in absolute silence. Isabella was sitting in the back seat of the bulletproof Mercedes, between the two security guards, while her father occupied the front seat next to the driver. The rain had stopped, but the sky remained heavy, as if nature itself were foreshadowing the approaching storm. Isabella observed the familiar landscape through the tinted window, but everything seemed different now. The streets of Westchester County, which she had always traveled as a protected daughter, now welcomed her as a stranger, questioning her own identity. Every reference from her childhood, the club where she had learned to swim, the school where she had made few but loyal friends, the church where she should have gotten married yesterday, everything seemed to belong to another life, to another person. "Isabella," Richard's voice cut through the silence, "I want you to know that everything we did was to protect you." "Protect me from what, Dad?" "From the truth. From a truth that could destroy you. Or that could destroy you." Richard turned in his seat to face her, and for the first time in her life, Isabella saw real vulnerability in his eyes. "My daughter, there are things in this world that are more complicated than right and wrong. There are choices we make, not because they're ideal, but because they're necessary. Necessary for whom? For everyone. For you. For our family. For your safety. And Lily? Were the choices you made necessary for her too?" The silence that followed was more eloquent than any answer. When the car passed through the gates of the mansion, Isabella felt a strange tingling on the back of her neck. It was as if some invisible force were reacting to her return. The ancient trees that lined the entrance seemed to whisper secrets, and the house windows watched her like vigilant eyes. Victoria was waiting for them at the main entrance, wearing a black dress that made her look like she was in mourning. Her eyes were red, and when she saw Isabella getting out of the car, she ran toward her. "My daughter, thank God you're safe." Victoria hugged her with a desperate intensity. "We were so worried we thought that..." "That what, Mum?" "That Damien had killed me like you killed Lily?" Victoria pulled away as if she had been slapped. "Isabella, how can you say such a thing?" "Because that's what he believes, and I'm starting to believe it too. My daughter, that man has poisoned your mind with terrible lies. Lily died in a tragic accident, you know that." "Do I? Or is that what you made me believe?" Richard approached, placing his hand on his wife's shoulder. "Victoria, let us resolve this in private. Isabella wants to see the supposed secret archives that Carter said exist in the attic." "What secret archives?" Victoria seemed genuinely confused. "Exactly what I thought," said Richard with satisfaction. "There are no secret archives because there are no secrets to hide. Then there won't be a problem showing me the attic." The three entered the mansion, and Isabella was immediately hit by a wave of nostalgia mixed with estrangement. This place had been her home for 29 years. Each room carried memories of her childhood and adolescence. But now everything seemed superficial, like a carefully constructed scenario to sustain a lie. "Has Andrew been here?" she asked as they climbed the main staircase. "He has," replied Victoria. "He was devastated, of course. He can't understand why you did this to him. To the families. I didn't do anything to him, I just refused to live a lie." "Marriage isn't a lie, Isabella. It's commitment, it's responsibility. It's convenience," she completed. "At least ours would have been." They reached the second floor, and Richard hesitated in front of the stairs leading to the attic. "Isabella, are you sure you want to do this? Sometimes it's better to leave the past in peace." "The past won't be at peace until I know the truth." "Very well. But when you see that there's nothing up there except old furniture and stored memories, I hope you'll finally understand that Damien Carter is a disturbed man who is using you." Richard opened the attic door and turned on the lights. The space was exactly as Isabella remembered from when she was a child. Spacious, a bit dusty, full of furniture covered with sheets and stacked boxes. Nothing seemed secret or sinister. "See?" said Richard with a triumphant tone. "Old furniture, Christmas decorations, clothes your mother can't bear to part with. Where are the terrible archives that Carter guaranteed existed?" Isabella walked around the attic, touching the boxes, observing the furniture. Damien had been very specific about the location of the documents. According to him, Lily had found a secret hiding place behind an old armoire. "Where are Grandma Hannah's bedroom furniture?" she asked suddenly. Victoria and Richard exchanged a look. "What furniture?" asked Victoria. "The cedar armoire, the dresser with mirror, the writing desk. I remember playing with them here when I was little." "They were donated," said Richard quickly. "A few years ago. They weren't in good condition." "When exactly?" "I don't remember. Why does that matter?" But Isabella had already noticed something strange. In the corner where the grandmother's furniture used to be, there was an area on the floor with a different shade, as if something heavy had remained there for decades and been recently removed. And on the wall behind, there were scratch marks on the wallpaper. "You moved the furniture after Damien started asking questions again, didn't you?" "Isabella, you're being paranoid." "No, Mom. I'm being smart. For the first time in my life, I'm paying attention to the details." She knelt down and examined the marks on the floor. Definitely, heavy furniture had been dragged from there recently. Where are they now? What difference does it make? Richard was visibly nervous. They were just old furniture. If they were just old furniture, why the rush to get rid of them? Because... Richard stopped, realizing that any answer would compromise him. Isabella stood up and faced her parents. "You know what Damien told me. You know he believes I'm adopted, that Lily and I were twins, that she was murdered for discovering the truth. If all these are lies, why don't you prove otherwise?" "How?" asked Victoria, with a small voice. "Show me my original birth certificate, the one from the hospital, not the official one. Show me photographs of the pregnancy, of the first days after my birth. Tell me about the delivery, about what I was like as a baby." The silence that followed was deafening. "You can't, can you?" said Isabella slowly. "Because I wasn't born to you, was I?" Victoria began to cry silently. "Isabella, please." "No, Mom, not. Please. Truth. I want the truth now." Richard approached his daughter, hands extended in a gesture of supplication. "Isabella, you are our daughter. You may not have been born to us biologically, but you're our daughter in all the ways that matter. We raised you, we loved you, we protected you. So it's true." The words came out as a whisper. "I'm adopted." "Not adopted," said Victoria quickly. "Chosen, wanted, loved. Why? Why didn't you tell me?" Richard sighed deeply, as if he had been carrying a weight for decades. "Because your biological mother asked us not to tell. It was a condition of the adoption." "Who was she?" "A young woman who made a mistake. Got pregnant very young by a man who couldn't marry her. She didn't have the means to raise a child." "And Lily?" "Lily was your twin sister." Even knowing she would hear this confirmation, Isabella felt the world spin around her. She leaned on one of the boxes, trying to maintain balance. "Identical twins. Identical. Why separate us?" "Because..." Victoria looked at Richard as if asking permission to continue. "Because your biological mother could only keep one child, and she chose Lily." The pain that pierced Isabella's chest was physical. Her own mother had chosen her sister. "Why? Why did she choose Lily?" "We don't know," said Richard gently. "Maybe because she was born first. Maybe for some other reason. But that doesn't matter because you came to us and we were blessed." "Who was she? What was my biological mother's name?" Richard and Victoria exchanged another look. "Her name was Ellen," said Victoria finally. "Ellen Smith. Is she still alive?" "No. She died when you were 2 years old. Cancer." Isabella slowly absorbed the information. Her biological mother had died while still young, taking with her all the secrets about the twins' birth. "And the biological father?" "We never knew who he was. Ellen never wanted to reveal. So Lily grew up knowing the biological mother, and I never had that chance. Lily knew Ellen for only 2 years. You had a mother who loved you for 29. It was a valid distinction, but it didn't ease the pain of the original rejection. "Why did Lily never tell me we were twins?" "Because we asked her not to tell. We thought it would be Confusing for both of you. Confusing or inconvenient. Isabella, Richard began. No, Dad. Be honest with me. You didn't tell because it would be too scandalous to have two illegitimate daughters. Because it was easier to pretend one was legitimate and the other a bastard. The silence confirmed her suspicion. You destroyed our relationship as sisters to protect your own reputations. We protected both of you, Richard exploded. From the stigma, from the malicious comments, from the difficulties you would face if the truth were known. You protected yourselves. And in the process you created one rebellious sister, who questioned everything, and one obedient sister, who never questioned anything. Lily was always difficult, even before knowing the truth. When did she find out? At 18. She found some old documents and confronted us. And how did she react? She was furious. She said we had robbed her of the right to know her own sister, that we had lied to her entire life. And she was right. She was. The admission came from Victoria, surprising everyone. She was indeed. And since then, our relationship with her was never the same. Is that why she rebelled even more? Why she fell in love with Damien? Partially. I think she saw Damien as a way to punish us, to get revenge for us having hidden the truth. And you killed her for that. No, Richard shouted. We would never harm Lily. She may have been difficult, may have disappointed us, but she was our daughter. Then prove it. Show me that she really died in an accident. How can we prove such a thing after so many years? By showing me the documents she found before she died. The documents that made her call Damien that night, saying she had discovered something important about the family. Richard went pale. What documents? The documents that were hidden behind Grandma Hannah's furniture. The documents you removed when Damien started investigating again. We don't know what you're talking about. Stop lying, Isabella's voice echoed through the attic. Stop lying to me. Lily found something up here, something so compromising that you preferred to kill her rather than let her reveal it. And now I'm here, asking the same questions, discovering the same truths. What are you going to do to me? Isabella, you're our daughter. We would never harm you. Lily was your daughter too. Did that protect her? The silence that followed was the most eloquent answer they could have given. It was then that Isabella heard it, a low sound, almost imperceptible, as if someone were whispering her name, but not her name. Another name. Ellen, she murmured. What did you say? Asked Victoria. Did you hear that? Hear what? Someone whispering. Richard and Victoria exchanged a worried look. Isabella, there's no one here but us. But she continued to hear it. A female voice, very low, like an echo from far away, calling for Ellen. And then, gradually, the whisper transformed into a melody. The same melody she had dreamed about in Damien's house. The piano, she said suddenly. What piano? The music I'm hearing, it's the same one Lily used to play. Isabella, you're scaring at... Where are Lily's things? Her clothes, her books, her personal belongings? They were donated too. When? Soon after she died. It was too painful to keep... Lie. Isabella turned and began to search the more distant boxes. You kept everything, didn't you? Because getting rid of her things would have been too suspicious. She opened a random box and found old female clothes. She opened another and found books. In the third box, she found photographs. Isabella, don't touch that. But she was already leafing through the photos. There were many of Lily at various ages, child, teenager, young adult. The resemblance between them was truly impressive, but there was something else that caught her attention. In one of the photographs, Lily was standing next to a woman Isabella didn't recognize, a beautiful woman with dark hair and sad eyes. On the back of the photo there was a note, Lily and Ellen last meeting. This is her, said Isabella, showing the photo to her parents. This is Ellen, our biological mother. Victoria snatched the photograph from her hands. Where did you find this? In the box with Lily's things. You said Ellen died when we were 2 years old, but in this photo, Lily is already a teenager. It must be someone else. With the same name written on the back, don't be ridiculous. Isabella continued searching the box and found more photographs. Ellen at various ages, always with Lily. Letters written in a delicate handwriting. And then at the bottom of the box, she found a document that made her stop breathing. It was a death certificate. Ellen Smith's. Dated just 5 years ago. Ellen died 5 years ago, she said slowly. Not when we were 2 years old, 5 years ago. The silence in the attic was absolute. That means Lily knew her, lived with her, had a relationship with her while Isabella's voice faltered, while I never even knew she existed. Victoria began to cry. Isabella, please try to understand. Understand what? That you allowed my sister to know our biological mother, but hid her existence from me. That you kept us intentionally separated, even knowing how much we would mean to each other. It was better that way. For whom? For you. Isabella continued searching through the boxes, now with a furious determination. If there were more lies, she would discover them all. In a smaller box she found a diary. Lily's diary. Don't read that, said Richard, trying to take the book from her hands. Why not? Because some things are private even after death, or because you know what's written here. Isabella opened the diary to the last entry, dated 3 days before Lily's death. I finally discovered the truth about Isabella, she read aloud. Ellen told me before she died that we were twins, that she was forced to separate us, not by her own choice, but because someone threatened her. Someone said that if she tried to keep both daughters, she would lose both. Isabella stopped reading and looked at her parents. Continue, said Richard, his voice tense. Ellen never told me who threatened her, but today I found the documents in the attic. Forged adoption contracts, falsified certificates, and worst of all, letters. Letters proving that the Pierces knew exactly who our biological father was, and that they used this information to blackmail Ellen. I'm going to tell Damien everything tomorrow. It's time for the truth to come out. The silence that followed was broken only by the sound of Isabella's own breathing. Who is he? She asked without looking up. Who is our biological father? Isabella. Who is he? Richard sighed, defeated. Someone important, someone powerful, someone married. Who? Someone who could never publicly acknowledge 2 illegitimate daughters. Who? She shouted. Jonathan Davidson. The world stopped around Isabella. Jonathan Davidson, Andrew's father. The man she had almost married. Her half-brother. Andrew is my brother? Half-brother. And you were going to let me marry him? The kinship is distant. Technically, it wouldn't be incest? Isabella's voice was loaded with horror and disgust. We didn't know if Andrew would ever find out. We thought it would be safe. Safe for whom? For me, who would be married to my own brother? Or for you, who would be definitively connected to the Davidson family? Isabella, please, let us explain. No. She stood up, the diary still in her hands. There's no explanation for this. You were willing to let me marry my own brother to protect this family's dirty secrets. The marriage would definitively unite the families. Any secrets from the past would be buried forever. You're monsters, all of you. Isabella began walking toward the attic exit, but Richard blocked her path. Where are you going? Away, far from you, forever. You can't, now that you know the truth. What? You'll kill me like you killed Lily. Nobody killed Lily. She found out she was going to tell Damien everything. She found out you had compromising documents, that you had blackmailed our biological mother, that you were willing to marry me to my own brother. Do you think she would stay quiet? She died in an accident, caused by you. It was then that a new voice cut through the discussion. Actually, said Andrew, appearing at the top of the stairs, it was caused by me. Everyone turned to look at him. Andrew was pale, his eyes red, wearing the same clothes from the day before. He looked like he hadn't slept. Andrew? Victoria seemed genuinely surprised. What are you doing here? I came to confess, he said simply. I'm tired of carrying this weight alone. Confess what? Asked Isabella, though part of her already knew the answer. That I was the one who sabotaged Lily's car. That I was the one who killed her. The attic became so silent that it was possible to hear the heartbeat of each person present. Andrew. No, Richard began. No, Uncle. Enough. She deserves to know the truth. Andrew looked directly at Isabella. I knew. I always knew that you and Lily were sisters, that my father was father to both of you too. When Lily found out and threatened to expose everything, you killed her. I killed her. The words came out like a liberating confession. I sabotaged her car's brakes. I thought it would be quick, that it would look like an accident. And it worked, until Damien started investigating. Isabella felt her legs fail. She leaned against the wall, trying to process the confession. Why? Why did you kill her? Because if the truth came out, both families would be destroyed. The scandal would be enormous, and because— He hesitated. Because what? Because I was already in love with you. And if they discovered we were siblings, we could never be together. We are siblings, half-siblings. It's different. It's not different. For me it was. I wanted you since we were teenagers. When I learned I could finally have you as my wife, you killed my sister so you could marry me. I killed Lily to protect all the people we love, including you. Isabella looked around the attic. Her adoptive father, who had hidden her true origin. Her adoptive mother, who had allowed her twin sister to grow up knowing the biological mother while she remained in ignorance. And Andrew, who had murdered Lily to protect the family secrets and to be able to marry his own sister. "You're all monsters," she whispered. "Isabella, please." Victoria approached. "Don't touch me. None of you ever touch me again." She began to move toward the stairs, but Andrew again blocked her path. "I can't let you leave. Not now that you know everything." "Andrew, let her pass," said Richard. "I can't. If she leaves, she'll tell Damien everything, and then we'll all be lost." "So what? You deserve to be lost. Isabella, you're also part of this family. If you destroy us, you'll be destroying yourself too." "I'm not part of this family. You stole me from my real family." "Your real family is dead. Ellen died, Lily died. We're all you have. I have Damien. Damien is only interested in you because he thinks you're Lily." "That's not true." "It is. And when his interest passes, you'll be alone. But with us, you'll always have a family that loves you. You don't love me, you use me." "Isabella," Andrew took a step toward her, "don't come near me. We need to talk. We need to find a solution to this. The solution is simple. I leave, and you let me go." "I can't do that." "Why not?" "Because you know too much, and because—" He paused. "Because I still want to marry you." "You're insane. I'm in love, and I won't let you go." It was then that Isabella realized she was in real danger. Andrew had killed Lily to protect the family secrets. He wouldn't hesitate to do the same to her. "Richard," she said, looking at her adoptive father, "you won't let this happen, will you?" Richard looked between her and Andrew, clearly torn. "Andrew, maybe it's better to let her go. We can find another way to resolve this." "There is no other way. She knows everything, and if she tells Damien, then what do you suggest?" asked Victoria. "That she stays here, until we find a permanent solution. You're talking about imprisoning me, kidnapping me. We're talking about protecting you from yourself. And if I scream, if I call for help, who will hear? We're in the middle of a 5-acre property and the nearest neighbors are half a mile away." Isabella understood that she was truly cornered. 3 people who had lied to her entire life, one of whom had committed murder, had her trapped in an isolated attic. But then she remembered something. Damien had said he would watch her, that if anything happened to her, everyone would know the truth about the Pierces. "Damien knows I'm here," she said. "If I don't show up, he'll come looking for me." "Let him come," said Andrew. "It will be easier to solve both problems at once." The threat was clear. Andrew wasn't just talking about imprisoning Isabella. He was talking about killing both her and Damien. "Andrew, you can't be serious," said Richard. "I'm completely serious. It's past time we resolve this definitively. I won't allow you to hurt my daughter." "Your daughter? She's not even your biological daughter." "It doesn't matter. She's my daughter in all the ways that matter." "Then help me find a solution that protects her and protects our family." "The only solution is to let her go." "No." The tension in the attic was becoming unbearable. Isabella perceived that the situation could explode at any moment, and when that happened, she would be the victim. It was then that she heard it again. The whisper, clearer this time. It wasn't just one voice, it was 2 voices, Ellen and Lily whispering together, calling to her. "Do you hear that?" she asked the others. "Hear what?" asked Victoria. "The voices." "Isabella, there are no voices. You're in shock." But she knew she wasn't imagining it. The voices were getting clearer, more urgent, and they seemed to be coming from beneath the floor. "Ellen and Lily are here," she said, surprising herself with the certainty in her voice. "They're dead, Isabella. Their bodies are dead. But they're here, and they're trying to tell me something." She knelt on the floor, pressing her ear against the boards. The voices were clearer now, urgently whispering. "They're saying to look underneath," said Isabella. "Underneath what?" "Underneath the floor." She began to examine the boards, looking for one that might be loose. In the corner where Grandma Hannah's furniture used to be, she found a section that seemed different from the others. "Here," she said, "there's something here underneath." "Isabella, stop this." But she had already found a board that was just fitted in, not nailed down. She pulled it, revealing a hiding place in the floor. Inside the hiding place there was a metal box. "My God," whispered Victoria. Isabella took the box out of the hiding place and opened it. Inside there were documents, photographs, and letters. Many letters. "These are Ellen's letters," she said, recognizing the handwriting from the photos she had seen. "The letters that Lily found." She picked up one of the letters and began to read aloud. "My dear Jonathan, I can no longer live this lie. Our daughters deserve to know the truth about who they are, and they deserve to know each other. If you don't tell them, I will." Isabella looked up and saw that everyone in the attic had gone pale. "There's more," she said, picking up another letter. "Jonathan, your threats won't silence me forever. Lily already knows she has a twin sister. It's only a matter of time until she discovers who it is. And when that happens, the whole truth will come out." "Stop reading," said Andrew. "Why? Afraid of what else I'll discover?" She picked up a third letter, this one more recent. "Jonathan, I'm dying. Cancer is winning. Before I go, I want to ensure my daughters meet. They deserve to have each other, to know their true origin. If something happens to me before this is resolved, I've left instructions for Lily to find all the necessary documents. The truth won't die with me." Isabella put the letter back in the box and looked at the three adults surrounding her. So Lily didn't discover by chance. Helen had planned everything. She had left the clues for her to find us. "Isabella," Richard began, "and when Lily found everything, when she was about to tell me, you killed her." "We didn't kill anyone," said Victoria. "It was Andrew who—" "Andrew acted to protect the family, a family you're all part of." "We're not a family," shouted Isabella. "We're a collection of liars, murderers, and cowards." "Be careful what you say," said Andrew, his voice loaded with threat. "Or what? You'll kill me too, if necessary." "Andrew," Richard interposed himself between him and Isabella. "Enough. I won't allow you to hurt her." "Then you have a choice, Uncle. Either she stays quiet about all this, or we eliminate the problem." "The only way I'll stay quiet," said Isabella, "is if you kill me, because as long as I'm alive, I'll tell the world who you really are." "So be it," said Andrew, taking a step toward her. It was at this moment that a sound echoed through the house, the doorbell ringing insistently. "Damien," whispered Isabella. "Let him ring," said Andrew. "We won't answer." But the doorbell continued ringing, and then there were knocks on the door, strong, insistent. "Open the door." Damien's voice reached them, even being on the third floor. "I know Isabella is in there." "He won't go away," said Richard. "Then let's resolve this once and for all," said Andrew. He began to move toward the stairs, but Isabella was faster. Taking advantage of the distraction, she ran to the other side of the attic, where there was a small window that gave onto the roof. "Don't let her escape!" shouted Andrew. But Isabella had already opened the window and was climbing onto the sill. Outside, the rain had started again, making the roof slippery and dangerous. "Isabella, get down from there," shouted Victoria. "You're going to hurt yourself." "I'd rather hurt myself than stay here with you." And then, in a decision that would change everything, she went out the window and began to descend down the wet roof toward the side of the house. Down below she could see Damien knocking on the main door. When he saw her on the roof, his face transformed into a mask of terror. "Isabella, what are you doing?" "Escaping," she shouted back, trying to maintain balance on the wet tiles. "Get down from there. It's too dangerous." But at that moment she slipped. Her foot lost traction on a broken tile, and she began to slide down the roof toward the edge. She tried to grab onto anything, but her hands found no support. She was about to fall from a height of almost 30 feet when suddenly she felt a hand holding hers. She looked up and saw Andrew, who had come out through the same window, and reached her. "Hold on to me," he said, pulling her up. For a moment Isabella thought he was saving her, but then she saw the expression in his eyes and understood there was a different plan. "If I can't have you," he said quietly, "no one else can." And then, deliberately, He let go of her hand. Isabella began to fall, the world spinning around her, Damien's scream down below echoing in her ears. But before hitting the ground, before darkness took over, she heard clearly the voices of Ellen and Lily whispering together, "Now you're free to choose your own life." And then everything went black. The impact never came. Isabella opened her eyes slowly, expecting to feel pain, expecting to see the grey sky above her, expecting to understand that she had miraculously survived the fall. Instead, she found herself looking at a uniform white ceiling, with the constant sound of machines in the background and the characteristic smell of hospital disinfectant. "She's awake." Damien's voice came from somewhere nearby, loaded with a relief so deep it made her heart accelerate. Isabella tried to move, but a sharp pain in her left arm and ribs made her moan. "Don't move," said a female voice she didn't recognize. "You suffered a significant fall. You have a fractured left arm, 3 broken ribs, a mild concussion, and various bruises. But considering the height of the fall, you were very lucky." "Lucky?" Isabella managed to whisper, her throat dry. "The awning of the veranda broke your fall. It probably saved your life." Damien appeared in her field of vision, his face marked by worry and lack of sleep. His eyes were red, and there was something in them she had never seen before, a raw vulnerability, as if he had been on the verge of losing everything that mattered. "How do you feel?" he asked, gently touching her face. "Like I fell off a roof," she tried to joke, but her voice came out weak. "Don't joke about that. When I saw you falling—" He paused as if the memory were too painful. "I thought I had lost you before I even found you. How long was I unconscious?" 2 days. The doctors said it was normal due to the concussion, but I—" He sat in the chair next to the bed. "I didn't leave here for a single minute." "And my family?" Damien's expression hardened. "That's a long conversation. And complicated. Tell me, are you sure? You just woke up. Maybe it's better to rest first." "Damien." Even weak, her voice carried determination. "Tell me." He sighed deeply, as if preparing to report a war. "When I saw you falling, I ran to where you had fallen. You were unconscious, bleeding, but breathing. I immediately called an ambulance. While we waited for the paramedics to arrive, Richard, Victoria, and Andrew came down from the house." "What did they say?" "Richard was in panic, genuinely worried about you. Victoria was crying hysterically. But Andrew—" "What did Andrew do?" "Andrew tried to convince the paramedics that you had fallen accidentally, that you were exploring the attic, went out the window without thinking, and slipped on the wet roof. And you didn't let him." "I didn't let him. I told the paramedics and later the police that there was something very suspicious about the whole situation. That you had fled from your own home in fear, that your family had brought you back against your will, and that the fall wasn't accidental." Isabella slowly absorbed the information. The simple idea that Damien had fought for her when she was unconscious and vulnerable deeply moved her. "Did the police believe you?" "At first, no. After all, it was my word against one of the most respected families in New York. But then—" Damien smiled for the first time since she had awakened. "Something unexpected happened." "What?" "Victoria broke down. Completely. At the police station, while giving her statement, she started crying and couldn't stop. And then she began to tell everything." Isabella widened her eyes. "Everything?" "Everything. About you being adopted, about Lily being your twin sister, about Jonathan Davidson being the biological father of both of you, about the threats to Ellen, and most importantly—" Damien made a dramatic pause. "What else?" "She confirmed that Andrew had confessed to killing Lily." The silence in the hospital room was broken only by the sound of the monitoring machines and Isabella's ragged breathing. "Has he been arrested?" "He's been arrested, and he's confessing everything. It seems that carrying this secret for 29 years was more than he could bear. When he realized he had almost killed you too, something in him broke definitively." "And Richard?" "Richard is cooperating with the investigation. He didn't directly participate in Lily's murder, but he admitted to having helped cover it up. He's facing charges of obstruction of justice and accessory after the fact." "And Victoria?" "Victoria is devastated. She really loved you and Lily. I think she never imagined things would go so far. She's testifying against Andrew in exchange for immunity." Isabella closed her eyes, trying to process the magnitude of the situation. In a few days, Her entire family had disintegrated. Terrible truths had come to light, and her sister would finally have justice. And Jonathan Davidson? Ah, Damien smiled in a way that didn't reach his eyes. Jonathan Davidson is desperate. He initially tried to deny everything, but the documents you found in the attic are irrefutable. The scandal is already starting to leak to the press. How is he reacting? He offered money for everyone to keep quiet. When that didn't work, he tried to use political influence. When that didn't work either, he started threatening people. Threatening how? Nothing you need to worry about now. He's a powerful man entering panic, making desperate moves. But the truth is already out. There's no way to contain it. And you? How are you handling all this? Damien remained quiet for a long moment, looking at his own hands. Honestly, I'm feeling a mixture of relief and guilt. Guilt. I spent 29 years obsessed with Lily's death. 29 years of my life dedicated to proving she had been murdered. And now that I finally succeeded, he looked at her. I feel like it's too late. It's not too late. Lily will finally have justice. And the truth about us two has finally come to light. But at what cost? You almost died, and He hesitated. You what? I fell in love with you. Hopelessly, completely, irreversibly. And I don't know if that's right. Why wouldn't it be right? Because you look like her. Because I met you in a traumatic situation. Because maybe I'm confusing my feelings for Lily with what I feel for you. Isabella extended her good hand and touched his face. Damien, look at me. He obeyed. I'm not Lily. I'll never be Lily. We're different people with different personalities, different dreams. If you're falling in love with me because you think I'm her, then you're right to be concerned. And if I'm falling in love with you because you're unique, brave, intelligent, and beautiful in a completely your own way, then I think we can discover together what that means. Damien smiled, and this time the smile reached his eyes. You almost died 2 days ago. You're in a hospital bed with a broken arm, and you're consoling me about my romantic fears. It's the kind of person I am. It's exactly why I'm falling in love with you. He leaned in and kissed her softly, careful with her injuries. It was a different kiss from what they had shared in the attic of his house. There was no urgency or desperation, only tenderness and the promise of something real and lasting. When they separated, a nurse entered the room. Excuse me for interrupting, but there are some people here who would like to see you. What people? Asked Isabella, alarmed. If it's my family— No, the nurse hurried to reassure her. They're 2 detectives and a lawyer. They said you had asked to be informed when you were awake and feeling well enough to talk. Isabella looked at Damien. Did you ask them to come? I did. There are some legal things you need to know, some decisions you need to make. But if you're not feeling well— No. I want to resolve this now. I want everything to be clarified. Are you sure? I'm sure. The detectives entered first, a middle-aged man with a tired appearance and a young woman with a notebook. The lawyer followed, an elegant woman in her early 50s who radiated competence. Miss Pierce, said the older detective, I'm Detective Sanders, and this is Investigator Lee. This is Dr. Connors, who represents your legal interests. My legal interests? Yes, said the lawyer, approaching. When the truth about your adoption and Ellen Smith's inheritance came to light, we discovered there are significant issues of inheritance and legal rights that need to be resolved. I don't understand. Ellen Smith, your biological mother, left a considerable inheritance. A house in Aspen, Colorado, some financial investments, and most importantly, the rights to various musical compositions she had written. Ellen was a composer. She was a talented musician. Some of her songs were recorded by famous artists in the 80s and 90s, and they still generate significant royalties. Isabella slowly absorbed the information. Even in death, Ellen was taking care of her. And Lily? Did she know about the inheritance? She knew, said the detective. In fact, she was trying to legally contest her exclusion from the original will. Ellen had left everything to you, specifically. Why? We don't know for certain. But there's a letter that Ellen left with her lawyer to be delivered only if the inheritance was claimed. The lawyer took a sealed envelope from her folder. This letter is for you. With trembling hands, Isabella opened the envelope and read the letter in silence. Tears began to run down her face as she read. What does it say? Asked Damien gently. She says she always loved me, even without being able to raise me. that she chose to stay with Lily because she knew I would be raised in a family that could give me opportunities she couldn't offer, but that she never stopped loving me, never stopped thinking about me. Isabella paused, wiping away the tears. And she says she left the inheritance to me because she wanted me to have the freedom to choose my own life without depending on anyone. That music was what she loved most in the world, besides her daughters, and that she hoped I would find the same passion in something. It's a beautiful letter, said the lawyer softly. But there are legal issues we need to discuss, said the detective. First, you'll need to testify against Andrew Davidson in his trial for Lily's murder. I'll do that. Second, there's the question of your legal identity. You were raised as Isabella Pierce, but your original documents are in the name of Isabella Smith. You can choose which name you want to legally keep. Isabella didn't hesitate. I want to be Isabella Smith. It's who I really am. And third, continued the detective, there's the question of the Pierce mansion and the family assets. Technically, you have no right to any of it, since you're not their biological daughter. And I don't want any of it. I just want to completely distance myself from that family. Understood. But there's a complication. What? Victoria Pierce is insisting on leaving everything to you in her will. She feels guilty about what happened and wants to compensate somehow. I don't want her compensation. May I suggest an alternative, said the lawyer. You could accept the inheritance and use the money to create a foundation in memory of Lily and Ellen. Something related to music, perhaps, or support for young single mothers. The suggestion resonated deeply with Isabella. That makes sense. Yes, I would like to do that. Excellent. I'll take care of all the legal documentation. After the officials and the lawyer left, Damien and Isabella were alone again. How do you feel about all this? He asked. Liberated, she answered without hesitation. For the first time in my life, I feel completely free to be whoever I want to be. And who do you want to be? I'm still discovering, but I know I want to be someone who honors the memory of Lily and Ellen, someone who uses this second chance at life to do something meaningful. And us? Where do I fit in your plans? Isabella smiled. That depends on what you want. I want to stay by your side while you discover who you are. I want to support your dreams, whatever they may be. I want to build something real and true with you, even knowing that I'm a completely different person from Lily, especially knowing that, then I think we have a future to plan. In the days that followed, while Isabella recovered in the hospital, a series of events unfolded rapidly. The case became national headlines, with journalists from all over the country covering the scandal of the Pierce and Davidson families. Andrew was formally charged with first-degree murder, with the aggravating circumstance of premeditation. His trial was scheduled for 6 months later. Jonathan Davidson resigned from all his public and business positions, facing his own set of charges related to Ellen's blackmail. Damien didn't leave Isabella's side during her entire recovery, and gradually she began to see layers of him that had been hidden by the 29-year obsession. He was more than the bitter and obsessed man he had become after Lily's death. He was intelligent, kind, funny when he relaxed, and incredibly talented. You should go back to painting, she said one afternoon, while he was helping her walk through the hospital corridors. I don't know if I can. It's been a long time since I touched a brush. Lily would want you to paint again. How do you know? Because she loved you. And when we truly love someone, we want them to be happy and fulfilled, not to spend their entire life mourning our absence. Damien stopped walking and looked at her. You're right. I always am. He laughed, a genuine sound she was beginning to love. Modest too. It's one of my best qualities. When Isabella was discharged from the hospital a week later, Damien took her not to his mansion, but to a new apartment he had rented in downtown Manhattan. Why? She asked. Because that house is full of memories of Lily. And although I will always love her and honor her memory, I don't want our relationship to begin in a place that belongs to the past. And this apartment belongs to our future. The apartment was modern, bright, with large windows that offered a view of the city. There was an art studio set up in the extra room, with easels, paints, and blank canvases waiting. For you, said Damien. You set up a studio for me. You mentioned in the hospital that you always wanted to learn to paint, but it was never allowed because it wasn't appropriate for a young woman of your position. Damien, she was speechless. Now you're free to try anything you want. And if you don't like painting, We can transform this into a music studio or an office or anything else that makes you happy." Isabella kissed him, pouring all her gratitude and growing love into that kiss. "Thank you," she whispered against his lips. "For what? For seeing me as I really am. For supporting who I want to become. It's easy to support someone you completely believe in." That night, as they dined at a small table near the window, Isabella asked a question that had been on her mind for days. "Damien, can I ask you something? Anything? I want to visit Lily's grave and Ellen's. I want to talk to them, thank them for leading me to you, to the truth." "Of course. We can go tomorrow if you want. And afterward," she continued, "I want to start working on the foundation. I want it to be something meaningful, something that really makes a difference in people's lives." "What area are you thinking about?" "Support for young single mothers, as you suggested, but also something related to music. Ellen was a composer, Lily played the piano. Maybe we can create music education programs for underprivileged children. It's a beautiful idea. And you? What do you want to do now that the truth has finally come to light?" Damien was thoughtful for a moment. "I want to start living again. I want to paint again, travel, discover the world beyond the obsession that consumed me for so many years. And I want to do all this with you by my side, even knowing that I'm still discovering who I am. Especially because of that, it will be an adventure to discover together." That night, for the first time since they met, they slept together without urgency or desperation. It was a peaceful, restorative sleep, full of the promise of better futures. But in the middle of the night, Isabella woke to the familiar sound of the whispers. This time, however, the whispers weren't desperate or urgent. They were gentle, affectionate, like a blessing. "Thank you," she whispered back in the dark. "Who are you talking to?" murmured Damien, half asleep. "Ellen and Lily. They're saying goodbye." "How do you know?" "Because I can feel it. They're at peace now. The truth has been revealed, justice is being done, and I'm free to live the life they wanted me to have." Damien pulled her closer. "And what life is that?" "A life of my own choices, a life of true love, a life that honors the past but isn't a prisoner to it." "Sounds perfect. It will be. Because now for the first time I have everything I need to be happy." "What is that?" "The truth about who I am, the freedom to choose my own destiny, and—" She turned to look him in the eyes, even in the darkness. "The love of a man who sees me exactly as I am and loves me for it. I love you, Isabella Smith. I love you too, Damien Carter." And for the first time in 29 years, for both her and for him, these words were said without shadows from the past, without fears of the future, just with the purity of the present and the promise of all the tomorrows to come. Outside the apartment, New York City continued its frenetic nightlife. But inside that small space they had created together, there was only peace, love, and the certainty that, after so much suffering and so many lies, they had finally found something true. The past was finally at peace. The present was full of love. And the future stretched before them like a blank canvas, waiting to be painted with all the colors of a life lived in freedom and truth. But there was still one last revelation waiting for them, a discovery that would make their union not just unlikely, but absolutely destined. And this revelation would come at the most unexpected moment, transforming their love story from improbable to inevitable, from coincidence to destiny. Love had conquered lies, truth had conquered deception, and the future, finally, belonged to them. 6 months later, Isabella was sitting in the witness stand at the New York Criminal Court, facing Andrew Davidson for the first time since the fall from the roof. He seemed to have aged a decade. His hair had whitened at the temples, his eyes were sunken and dull, and his hands trembled slightly when he tried to take notes on the pad in front of him. "Ms. Smith," said the prosecutor, using her chosen name with the respect she had learned to value, "can you tell us in your own words what happened in the attic of the Pierce mansion on January 15th? Isabella breathed deeply, feeling Damien's comforting presence in the front row of the courtroom. In recent months, they had built a life together that surpassed all her boldest dreams. But first, she needed to do justice for Lily. "I had discovered that I was adopted, that Lily was my twin sister, and that there were family secrets that explained her death," she began, her voice firm and clear. "When I confronted my adoptive family with this information, Andrew confessed to having sabotaged Lily's car, deliberately causing the accident that killed her. And what was his reaction when you threatened to expose the truth? He said he couldn't let me leave, that if I told what I knew, everyone would be lost. And when I tried to escape through the roof, Isabella paused, the memories still painful. He followed me. For a moment, I thought he was trying to help me. But then he said, "If I can't have you, no one else can." And he deliberately let go of my hand. A murmur ran through the courtroom. Andrew lowered his head, tears silently running down his face. "No further questions, Your Honor." The defense attorney tried to question her version of the facts, suggesting that her memories might be distorted by the trauma of the fall, but Isabella remained firm. The truth had become her strength, and she wouldn't allow it to be obscured again by convenient lies. After 3 hours of testimony, the trial was adjourned for lunch. Damien met her in the corridors of the courthouse, embracing her with the intensity of someone who understood exactly what that moment meant for her. "How do you feel?" he asked. "Complete," she answered. "For the first time, I feel that Lily can rest in peace." "And you? Can you rest in peace too?" "I can. Finally, I can." They had lunch at a small cafe near the courthouse, talking about plans for the foundation they had officially established the week before. The Ellen and Lily Smith Foundation already had its own headquarters, a staff of 5 employees, and had approved its first projects, a music education program for children from underprivileged communities and a support center for teenage mothers. "The music space turned out beautiful," said Damien, referring to the studio they had set up in downtown Manhattan. "The first classes start next week. 15 children enrolled so far. It's a modest beginning, but significant. Ellen would be proud. And Lily, too." They returned to the courthouse to hear the closing arguments. The prosecutor was eloquent and relentless, painting a detailed picture of how Andrew had planned and executed Lily's murder, and then tried to murder Isabella to cover up his crime. The defense attorney tried to argue that Andrew was mentally disturbed, that he had acted under extreme pressure, but the evidence was overwhelming. The jury retired to deliberate at 4 in the afternoon. Isabella and Damien waited in the corridor, she anxious, he trying to keep her calm. "What if they don't convict him?" she asked. "They will convict him. The evidence is clear, your testimony was convincing, and he himself confessed. But what if—" "Isabella," Damien held her hands. "Regardless of what happens here today, we know the truth. Lily knows the truth. And you two are finally free." At 7 in the evening, the jury returned with the verdict: guilty of first-degree murder, with the aggravating circumstance of premeditation. Andrew was sentenced to 25 years in prison, without the possibility of parole. When the sentence was read, Isabella didn't feel satisfaction or revenge. She felt only a profound relief. Justice had been done. Lily could finally rest. As they left the courthouse, they were approached by several journalists. But Isabella had prepared only a brief statement. "Today, my sister Lily finally received the justice she deserved. We hope this tragedy serves as a reminder that the truth, no matter how long it takes to emerge, always prevails. Now our focus is on honoring her memory and that of our mother through the work of the Ellen and Lily Smith Foundation." That night, back at the apartment, they quietly celebrated with a bottle of wine and the promise of a future finally free from the shadows of the past. "What do we do now?" asked Isabella, nestled in Damien's arms on the sofa. "Now we live, really live, without fear, without guilt, without secrets. I have a confession to make. After all the secrets that have already come to light, what else could there be?" Isabella smiled mysteriously. "I bought a ticket to Aspen, Colorado for tomorrow. I want to see the house that Ellen left me, and I want you to come with me." "Of course. But why is that a confession?" "Because I'm already planning our honeymoon there." Damien almost dropped his wineglass. "Our honeymoon? Well, first you have to propose to me. But assuming you'll do that soon." "Isabella Smith," he said, putting his glass aside and kneeling on the floor of the living room. "Will you marry me? Like that, with no ring, no preparation, no grand romantic gestures, with all the love I have in my heart, and the promise of a lifetime of discoveries together? Then yes. Definitely, completely, eternally yes." They kissed right there on the living room floor, and Isabella knew this would be one of the moments she would remember forever, not the most elaborate marriage proposal in the world, but certainly the most sincere. The next morning they hit the road to Aspen. The house that Ellen had left for Isabella was in a more secluded area of the city, surrounded by pine trees and with a view of the mountains. It was a European-style house, smaller than the Pierce mansion, but infinitely more welcoming. "It's perfect," said Isabella when they parked at the entrance. The key was exactly where the lawyer had said it would be, in a small mailbox disguised among the plants on the porch. When they opened the door, they were greeted by the smell of wood and the sound of wind in the trees outside. The house was impeccably preserved. Ellen had died only 5 years before and had left detailed instructions for the property to be maintained exactly as it was, waiting for the day when Isabella would discover it. "Look at this," said Damien, standing in front of a wall full of photographs. Isabella approached and felt her heart race. They were photographs of her and Lily at various ages, some that she recognized from the boxes in the Pierce's attic, others she had never seen. But what shocked her was realizing that Ellen had also managed to get photographs of her throughout the years. "How did she get photos of me?" she murmured, touching an image of herself at 16, at her debutante party. "She must have found ways to follow your life from a distance. But look at the dates. She was photographing both of us in parallel, as if she were documenting our separate lives." They continued exploring the house. In the master bedroom, they found a grand piano, the same model that Lily played. When Isabella pressed one of the keys, the note echoed through the house like a call. "Play something," said Damien. "I don't know how to play. Try. Let your instincts guide you." Isabella sat on the piano bench and placed her hands on the keys. Surprisingly, her fingers seemed to know where to go. She began playing a simple melody, hesitant at first, but gradually more confident. "That's the music Lily used to play," said Damien, amazed. "How do you know how to play it?" "I don't know. It's as if my hands knew by themselves." Identical twins share much more than appearance. Perhaps they also share memories, abilities. Or perhaps Lily is teaching me. The idea should have been frightening, but it wasn't. It felt like a blessing, as if her sister were finally sharing with her all the things they had been forced to keep separate in life. In Ellen's office, they found piles of handwritten sheet music, beautiful and melancholic compositions that spoke of lost love, persistent hope, and maternal longing. "She really was talented," said Isabella, leafing through the pages. "Very talented. Some of these songs seem familiar." Damien picked up one of the scores and began to hum the melody. Isabella recognized it immediately. "I know this song. It was the theme of a TV show a few years ago." Ellen must have sold some compositions to support herself. Not just to support herself. "Look at this." Isabella had found a folder labeled, "For Isabella. Open only when you're ready." Inside, there were financial documents showing that Ellen had systematically invested all the royalties from her music in an account in Isabella's name. "She spent years building an inheritance for you," said Damien, impressed. "Every penny she earned with her music was saved for the day you would discover who you were." "How could she be so certain I would discover?" "Maybe because she knew Lily. She knew her daughter would never give up on finding the truth." They continued exploring and, in the house's attic, made the most impressive discovery of all. It was an improvised recording studio, with old but functional equipment, and on the walls there were hundreds of cassette tapes organized by date. "What are these?" asked Isabella. Damien picked up one of the oldest tapes and read the label. "For Isabella, at 5 years old. She recorded messages for you?" They put the tape in an old recorder that still worked. Ellen's voice filled the small studio. "My dear Isabella, today you turned 5. I couldn't be there to see you blow out the candles, but I'm sure you looked beautiful. Lily told me you two look more and more alike. Sometimes she dreams about you, you know. She tells me that in her dreams you play together, as you should be doing in real life. One day, my daughter, you will meet. And when that happens, you'll understand that you were never really separated." There were tapes for each of Isabella's birthdays, for important dates, for random moments when Ellen felt nostalgic. They spent hours listening to the messages, Isabella crying and laughing alternately as she finally got to know the mother she had lost before even knowing she existed. On the last tape, recorded a few weeks before Ellen died, there was a different message. "My dear Isabella, if you're listening to this, it means that Lily managed to find the truth and bring you here. It also means that my time is up, but I'm not sad about that. I lived long enough to see my daughters grow into incredible women, even from a distance. There's something I need to tell you. Something that might change your perspective on everything that happened. The man Lily loves, Damien Carter, isn't a stranger to our family. A long time ago, when I was young and worked as a musician in New York, I met a man named Alexander Carter. He was an architect, as his son would be later. We fell in love, but he was married, and I was too young and idealistic to accept being the other woman. Alexander was Damien's father, my daughter. And before you think this makes your love complicated, let me explain why it doesn't. Alexander truly loved me, but he couldn't leave his wife for family reasons I never fully understood. When I discovered I was pregnant, I didn't tell him. I didn't want to force him into a choice he couldn't make. But there's a letter from him to me, written shortly before he died, that's in the drawer of the desk in this office. In it, he says he always knew about both of you, that he had hired investigators to follow your lives from a distance, and that his greatest regret was not having the courage to publicly acknowledge his daughters. The letter also reveals something surprising. Alexander left instructions that if something happened to him, Damien would inherit not only the family business, but also information about the existence of both of you. He wanted his son to know he had two half-sisters somewhere in New York. Damien never received this information because Alexander's widow destroyed it, fearing that the existence of illegitimate daughters would harm her own son's inheritance. But Alexander's letter is here, along with photographs of you and Lily that he managed to obtain over the years. My dear daughter, I'm telling you this not to complicate your life, but so you understand that the love between you and Damien isn't a coincidence. It's the echo of a love that your parents couldn't fully live. It's the universe giving you the chance to complete a story that began before you were born. Love each other freely, without guilt, without fear. You were made for each other in ways you can't even imagine. The silence in the studio after the tape ended was absolute. Isabella and Damien looked at each other, processing the extraordinary revelation. "We're half-siblings," she said finally. "We are," he agreed. "Our parents loved each other before we were born. They loved each other and couldn't be together. And now we can complete their story." They embraced in the small studio, surrounded by the voices of the past and the promises of the future. What should have been a complication seemed, instead, to be the final explanation for the inexplicable connection they had felt from the first moment. "Don't you find it strange," asked Isabella, "falling in love being half-siblings?" "I think true love transcends conventional categories," Damien replied. "And after everything we've been through, after all the impossible coincidences that brought us here, I can't believe it's a coincidence. Ellen planned all this, didn't she? I think Ellen and Alexander, along with Lily, conspired from beyond to unite us. And honestly, I'm grateful to them. In the desk drawer in the office, they found exactly what Ellen had promised. Alexander Carter's letter, along with photographs of the twins he had secretly collected over the years. The letter was a declaration of love and regret that brought tears to both their eyes. "He really loved her," said Isabella, finishing reading, "and she him. But circumstances didn't allow it. So it's up to us to live the love they couldn't live." Exactly. They spent 3 days in Aspen, exploring the house, listening to Ellen's tapes, organizing her sheet music, and mainly talking about the future. They decided they would marry right there in the house, surrounded only by the memories of the people who had guided them to this moment. "A small ceremony," said Isabella. "Just the two of us, a justice of the peace and the spiritual presences of Ellen, Lily, and Alexander." Perfect. The ceremony took place on a sunny spring morning, 3 weeks later. Isabella wore a simple white silk dress that had belonged to Ellen. Damien wore a dark suit that had been his father's. There were no physical guests, but both felt the comforting presence of those who had loved them and guided them to this point. The justice of the peace was a kind man from the city who had known Ellen personally and was moved by their story. The ceremony was simple but deeply meaningful. "You have chosen each other not only as partners in this life," said the justice, "but as continuers of a love story that began before you and will continue after you. May this union be a celebration not just of your mutual love, but of all the forces that conspired to bring you together." When they exchanged vows, Isabella felt as if she was speaking not only to Damien, but to the entire lineage of love that had preceded them. "Damien, you taught me that it's possible to fall in love with the right person at the right time, even when everything seems impossible. I promise to love you not only as a husband, but as a partner in the mission to honor those who came before us and guide those who will come after. Damien responded, "Isabella, you taught me that it's possible to start over, that it's possible to leave the past in peace without forgetting it, that it's possible to love again without betraying old loyalties. I promise to build with you a life that is a bridge between what was and what can be." When they kissed as husband and wife, a gentle breeze moved the curtains in the room, and both swore they heard the distant sound of a piano playing the melody that Lily used to play, now no longer melancholic but celebratory. The honeymoon was spent exploring the mountains of Aspen, planning the future of the foundation, and discovering the small intimacies of marriage. They transformed Ellen's house into a second residence, a place to escape from the bustle of New York and reconnect with the origins of their story. 6 months after the wedding, the Ellen and Lily Smith Foundation had expanded significantly. The music education program now served 50 children, and the support center for teenage mothers had helped 20 young women complete high school while raising their children. "I think they would be proud," said Isabella one afternoon, watching a piano class at the foundation headquarters. "I'm sure they are," replied Damien, hugging her from behind. "And you? Are you happy with the life we've built? Happier than I ever thought possible, even with all the craziness of how we got here. Especially because of the craziness. If our story were simple, it would be ordinary. And there's nothing ordinary about what we have." That night, while they dined in the apartment in New York, Isabella made an announcement that would change their lives once more. "Damien, there's something I need to tell you. If it's another revelation about our crazy family, I don't know if my heart can take it. It's a revelation, but it's a good one." "What is it?" "We're going to have a baby." Damien's fork fell on his plate with a metallic clatter. "It's scary? Scary and wonderful at the same time. Do you think we'll be good parents?" "I think we'll be parents who love unconditionally, who tell the truth even when it's difficult, and who raise our children to be free to make their own choices. In other words, everything our parents weren't for us." "Exactly." 9 months later, on a rainy winter dawn, Ellen Lily Carter Smith was born, a healthy girl who came into the world with her mother's green eyes and her father's quiet determination. "A baby?" "A baby, I found out this morning." "Isabella." He stood up and pulled her into an embrace. "This is amazing. It's perfect." "She's perfect," whispered Isabella, holding her daughter for the first time. "She's our chance to do everything right," replied Damien, gently touching his daughter's face, "and to continue the lineage of strong women who came before her." 2 years later, the story of Isabella and Damien had transformed into a legend whispered in New York social circles, not because of the scandals that had initiated it, but because of the transformation it had produced. The Ellen and Lily Smith Foundation had become one of the most respected charitable organizations in the city. Damien had returned to painting and had had 3 successful exhibitions, with part of the profits going to the foundation. Isabella had learned not only piano, but also composition, and was working on an album of songs based on the compositions left by Ellen. "Sometimes I still can't believe all of this is real," she said one morning, watching Damien play with Ellen in the garden of the house in Aspen. "What exactly?" "That I found my true family, that I discovered who I really am, that I married the love of my life, that we have a beautiful, healthy daughter, that we've built a life that honors the past but isn't a prisoner to it, and that we're happy, genuinely, completely happy. Yes, especially that." Ellen took her first steps that day, walking unsteadily from her father to her mother, while they shouted with joy and filmed everything. When she fell into Isabella's arms, both swore they heard applause coming from nowhere, as if Ellen and Lily were watching and approving. On the night of their 3rd wedding anniversary, Damien surprised Isabella with a special gift. He had painted a portrait of the family, him, her, and Ellen, but in the background of the canvas, as ethereal and benevolent figures, were Ellen Smith, Lily, and Alexander Carter. "It's our lineage of love," he explained, "all the people who conspired in the physical and spiritual worlds to bring us here." "It's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen," said Isabella, tears in her eyes. "It's our story, from beginning to end, of all the generations that came before and all that will come after. And it's just the beginning of our part of the story. The best is yet to come." And it was. Because what Isabella and Damien had discovered was that true love isn't just finding the right person. It's finding the right person at the right time, with the right courage and with the right wisdom to honor both the past and the future. They had begun as strangers united by a tragedy. They had become lovers united by a truth. And they had transformed into a family united by a love that transcended all conventional categories. The story of Isabella Smith and Damien Carter had begun with lies, secrets, and death. But it had ended with truth, transparency, and new life. And on quiet nights in Aspen, when the wind moved the trees and the stars shone above the mountains, sometimes they still heard whispers, no longer of lost souls asking for justice, but of spirits at peace offering blessings. Ellen and Lily could finally rest. Their mission was complete. Love had won, truth had prevailed, and a new generation was growing free from the lies that had haunted previous generations. The past was at peace, the present was full, and the future stretched before them like a blank canvas, waiting to be painted with all the colors of true love, chosen family, and freedom conquered through the courage to face the truth, no matter how painful it might be. It was, finally, a happy ending. Not because it was easy, but because it was true. And the truth, they discovered, was always the best foundation for a life of lasting love. The story had ended. Life had